Hello, and welcome to At Your End Step. My name is Morgan, and I'm here with Mike.
Oh, hi. Sorry, I didn't see you there. I was reading a book.
It's impossible for you to not see me here. I'm right here.
Play with me in this space, Morgan.
Play with me.
It's a bit.
Yeah, so today we're recording on the release day of the War of the Spark novel. And if you haven't heard, we have a Patreon. It's patreon.com/atyourendstep. And on said Patreon, we are going to be doing a book club for this novel. And, it's kind of broken up in three easy spots. You know, we have an Act 1, an Act 2, and an Act 3, similar to what we saw on the cards, obviously. So that's probably how we're going to be splitting it up on the Patreon. We'll take a closer look at that and we'll let you folks know what we decide on. But we both have the book. We've read varying levels of it so far. Once we decide to get to a good stopping point, we'll record the first part of the book club and release it to our patrons exclusively.
To our patrons.
Straight to that lovely bottle of tequila. So if you want to hear us talk about the novel, you can go to patreon.com/atyourendstep and join at any level. It will be available to all of our patrons. So and to all of our current patrons, we do thank you so much for contributing to the show. So with that being said, and that being the only other topic other than what this show is going to be entirely, which is going to be the first part of the War of the Spark-a-Palooza. And we got a lot of cards. We got a
there's like some heavy resignation there. Like, oh boy, there's cards.
You the spreadsheet that we have set up, like all of the like single color sections look about what they would normally look. They don't look too huge, but then you just see like multicolors, all of the single color line sections all in one. It's you have to scroll down on the spread. It's not great.
We've opted to mix the planeswalkers in.
Yes, so we're not going to talk about them like as a collective or a unit or anything like that.
And we aren't going to talk about all of them because some of them just aren't good enough. That is
100% correct. Some of them you'll draft in your deck and be like, oh, this is my good 23rd playable. But we are just going to go starting at white and move our way all the way down to colorless. And we're going to start here with a reprint, a comeback spell.
Yeah, brand new card, never before. Oh, wait, nope, Defiant Strike.
Defiant Strike, it is a instant for 1 white. And it says target creature gets +1/+0 until end of turn. Draw a card. So we saw this in Theros Standard initially. I don't know, what was it in? Because I know it was in Khan's block. It was one of the cards in Khan's block.
Yeah, it was because it was a Mardu card, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
So, but we saw it in conjunction with Heroic and with Jeskai Ascendancy.
Yes.
Only want to mention it here for a couple of reasons. One, there is like a Heroic sub-theme in Red, White, and War of the Spark. Some cards we'll get to, including Feather the Redeemed being the big one, 10th Street Legionnaire, and even Kranko, the new Kranko, likes these little pump spells that do this. There's also some cards that play in with casting a lot of spells, such as the new Saheeli, or even some of there's the blue uncommon we'll get to that proliferates when you cast non-creature spells. So Defiant Strike seems the kind of card that you could play a lot of. When it's had its time in Standard, it played a lot like cards like this in Modern do, which is it's a cantrip that does something and it costs a single mana. So you can move through your deck quickly. You can activate all these other abilities. I expected to see play. It saw a bunch of play last time in multiple decks. It'll see play now.
Yeah, I mean, it's a it's a cantrip, and it's something that obviously interacts with a bunch of cards we just listed. So it would be pretty surprising for it to not break through. This feels like a pretty solid indication that even though Heroic isn't a properly named mechanic, that there are still certain cards.
There's a lot of unnamed mechanics in this set.
Correct. So. There are a handful of cards that play well with this, and what's kind of exciting. So you said that there are a lot of unnamed mechanics, which means that we don't quite know what we're going to see next.
Right, that's true too.
Which is interesting. So a lot of these could be plants for the next expert level expansion. I don't expect to see to get blown away with Corset 2020.
Yeah.
I can't forget how they do mechanics, even if they do like specialty one-off mechanics. They have in the past, but I don't know if 2019 had anything like returning specifically. I can't remember. It's been a while, so I wouldn't expect to see anything there. But when we go to the next mysterious plane that we're going to be going to, maybe we'll see one of these like not named mechanics come back properly. So the next card is what? Finale of Glory?
Of Glory, yeah. This is X white for a sorcery. Create X 2/2 white soldier creature tokens with vigilance. If X is 10 or more, also create X 4/4 white angel creature tokens with flying and vigilance. And this is the first of our cycle of finales.
Correct.
As Morgan, you pointed out, I think you saw it on Twitter.
Yeah, I found it either Twitter or Reddit, but they mirror the same naming as the hours.
They're but they're just different colors.
They
I
are
didn't
different
catch
colors.
that, and that makes a lot of sense, which
Yeah.
is pretty cool. As far as a card, it's powerful, and most of the time, whenever we have a version of like white X make X creatures, it sees play. However,
Most of the time they're instant
most of
speed.
the time they're instant speed. The last time we had cat tokens, or 2/2 tokens being made that I can think of. It's like White Sun Zenith saw play, but that was an instant. We had what was the one that made soldiers? Also from Khan's block.
I can't remember.
We made X/1/1 soldiers. White X still see play in modern, and in standard we have March of the Multitudes. So I think this card is powerful, but I don't know where its place is, especially as long as March is also in standard.
Yeah, I think with these type of cards, you really you don't want to be holding your breath for that turn that you have to pass. And while this effect is you're making some beefy boys, you're making your big soldiers with vigilance. You're making knights. I don't know. I think that bothers me. Why aren't they just knights? You already have.
They're soldiers
I know, but why aren't they knights?
because they're Boros Legion tokens.
Why are you telling me they don't have knights? Like that is thematically inconsistent with the Boros Legion.
Yes, correct.
That's frustrating.
I'd have to go back and look. The only one I can think of, what's the 2/2 with First Strike and Mentor? That might be a knight, but generally they're soldiers. It is a traditional military battalion, not knights.
It's just so frustrating that they're just knight tokens, except they're named soldiers. I think it'd be better if they were red white, but then you'd have a mono white spell making multicolored creatures. I don't know, but anyway,
I do see a place where this could see play. In standard quickly, there are banned versions of the Nexus of Fate decks.
Oh yeah, this could be
so you could, before your Wilderness Reclamation, you could make 5 2/2s, then you take a turn, you attack for 10, you take a turn, you attack for 10.
Yeah, you just close out the game.
It is a faster win condition than Teferi.
Yes.
So that is with Wilderness Reclamation and specifically Nexus of Fate, where you can make the guys and then take another turn. I could see this being a win condition there for sure.
I could see that. Next up, we get the man, the myth, the legend, Gideon Blackblade.
The legendary Planeswalker.
One white for a legendary Planeswalker, Gideon. He comes in with 4 loyalty, and he has a static ability and then 2 activated abilities. So the static is, as long as it's your turn, Gideon Blackblade is a 4/4 human soldier creature with indestructible that's still Planeswalker. Prevent all damage that would be dealt to Gideon Blackblade during your turn. And it has a uptick, which is a +1. Up to 1 other creature you control gains your choice of Vigilance, Lifelink, or Indestructible. And a -6, which is exile target non-land permanent, which is very powerful text. and starting at 4, you get a couple upticks and you minus him. But this card's good.
Yeah, no, this card is on 3. This card is a beating in standard. It can come down on 2. I need you to understand. Letter Elves is still a card in standard.
Yeah,
but even on 3, right now, it's going to be competing with History of Benalia.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of decks that are going to want this card. And a lot of different types of decks. I can see Esper wanting this card.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Esper has a lot of good switch up sideboard options already. I mean, if you are playing just blue white control, you're probably you were playing History of Benalia. If you're playing Esper, then you might be playing what's the Spectre, the 2/2 flyer that nabs a card.
Oh
the top
yeah, I can't remember the top of my head.
Yeah, but
sorry, I'm learning names from this set, so those are gone for now.
So they're
Thief of Sanity. It
there
came
we go.
back. I got it.
So there are a lot of options, especially at the 3 mana slot. But I mean, this card is just, I just imagine landing this in like the control mirror and just going to town.
Yeah, I mean, you have to use essentially a 4-mana spell on it to do anything. It can get under counter magic, and I think yes, I think it's good in control, but like that +1 ability is also just very very strong. Like if you have another creature, you can protect your Gideon for the next turn.
Yeah.
And against more like red aggressive strategies, you could just like say, here, you get lifelink for a turn. Hey, you get this, and they still have to deal with Gideon. So man, I don't know. This card seems format warping for sure.
Yeah, and I mean, like, a lot of Gideons are.
Yeah, that's weird how that is. Well, maybe his next one won't be.
Oh, that's sad. That's sad. That's rough. I'm okay. I'm kind of okay with him getting like a last hurrah, right? Like, give him a good card. Sure. Let him be everywhere for the next 2 years, unfortunately. But I think this is busted for sure, and it's definitely a card like it is where a lot of like level 0 decks for week 1 will be starting.
I like to imagine those that Tim McGraw song "Live Like You Were Dying,"
yeah,
but give it some Gideon lyrics, because the lyric I lasted like some amount of seconds on a demon named Rakdos. It sounds great. It sounds great.
Oh boy.
And next up, we have more Gideon. It's Gideon's Triumph. This is 1 and a white for an instant. Target opponent sacrifices a creature that attacked or blocked this turn. If you control a Gideon Planeswalker, that player sacrifices 2 of those creatures instead. So when I've been looking at these Triumph cards, I've been trying to. I think you have to assess them without a Planeswalker for sure.
Yeah.
Target, the sacrificing attacker or blocking creature is powerful, especially since the way it's worded is if it's attacked or blocked this turn. Most of these are worded so they have to be attacking or blocking, but you can go through combat, block in a way so that only one creature is left,
and then be able to,
and then still be able to do this. But
target,
yeah,
quote unquote.
But this, out of all of them, this seems to be the one that will be most attainable to have the Gideon Rider on it, because you're gonna want Gideon. Like if you're playing Gideon, you probably want all the Gideons.
Yeah.
And 2 gets really really powerful. Like. Again, if you're trying to protect your Gideon in the first place, this is the card you want to start with. And there are still some threats in Standard where this is super relevant. Carnage Tyrant is obviously the big one that comes to mind, but even on a smaller scale, Adanto Vanguard.
Yeah.
That card, go ahead and pay for life. You get still sacrificed. So I think this card is deceptively powerful, especially in its wording. And I like that they've worked on this wording a little bit with some of these cards to push them. I know that some people complained about things like obviously Cry the Carnarium and its weird templating, but I think it's okay to push what a card can do and what it means in a turn, and I think this is doing that. So I like this, even though Gideon does sound like it looks like he murdered a wave of people, and he's kind of smiling about it. Like, yes.
I mean, they're still like zombies.
I'm just like the art on these Triumphs are bad.
I hate them.
I'm sorry.
They're
I don't mean like the artist did a bad job, because they were all given a direction to go with.
Correct.
Side of face in the Uncanny Valley is real tough to deal with.
Yeah, so. This is not a. If you're gonna get like Liliana's Triumph or like Modern or something like that, where that card might see play.
Get the promo.
There's a promo one you should probably look into. Unfortunately, you don't have any options with any of the other Triumphs, but oh well, I guess. Next up, we have again all the good ones.
Yeah, what is this trash?
God Eternal. You made the list. God Eternal Oketra. It is 3 generic white for a 3/6 legendary creature, zombie god, with double strike. And it says, whenever you cast a creature spell, create a 4/4 black zombie warrior creature token with vigilance. And it says it has the god clause. So all of the gods in the set have when this creature dies or is put into exile from the battlefield, you may put it into its owner's library, 3rd from the top.
Yeah, I really enjoyed this God Clause, because this still feels like the Santa Claus. Yeah. You killed Santa.
Nah.
It goes into your deck. In 2 turns, you become Santa. So this is good. This card's bonkers, right?
Yeah, it's good. It's definitely good. It's just so. I feel like we are definitely getting a lot of good cards, but they're also like what Where does this go?
Yeah, I don't know, and I hope that's what I'm going to say for a lot of these cards. I don't know just yet. We already have a lot of decks in Standard, and I'm hoping this pushes to some other decks. Like White Weenie has been established, but White X mid-range decks have been a little lacking. But now with Gideon and Oketra, I think we could start building a little bit bigger and being better, because White does so well right now because of its going wide strategy.
Yeah.
So it'd be nice to see, getting a couple cards that, create a little bit of card advantage on themselves. You don't have to commit a ton to the board. You get it back. You know what I mean? That's powerful. And you cast one creature with this. You know what I mean? Look at your mana investment. So you paid a 5-mana creature. You got to untap and you play a 2 or a 3 drop. So for your 7 or 8 mana, you got a 3/6 double striker. You got a 4/4 zombie token and the creature you cast. If you are not a deck with sweepers, how do you come back from that? Like a 4/4 is nothing to sneeze at. Like it's bigger than most of the stuff in the format. Like how do you come back?
I mean, that's a very good question for sure.
So it depends on how the things like the removal lines up. It's nice to still have things like Vraska's Contempt in the format. It is crazy to look at a card like Vraska's Contempt we've had for so long and go, well, come on, Trusty Rusty, we need you right now.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, it still only solves it for a little bit.
Yeah, you're not wrong, I guess, but
it's like all your other your Oblivion Ring effects.
It's also true. Yeah.
These gods are.
I was trying to think of what else at instant speed kills this though.
I mean,
besides Vraska's Contempt, like Mortify.
Yeah,
but they can't be cast down.
No.
So, yeah, it can be Gideon's Triumph, I guess.
It sure can.
Yeah, I don't know. It is really tough, and like I don't know what you do with it. Maybe we're looking at pacifism effects.
Potentially.
Sky Tether. Oh, nope, still triggers. That's not good. What's the ice one? The 0/4 that makes it a 0/4.
Well, there's a new one in this set that's 2 mana and turns it into a
1/1 with no abilities.
I think it's a no abilities.
Kamina's like
Kasmina's.
Sorry, I couldn't remember.
Transmutation.
It's like Kasmina, Bill Caminos, and Camino, which is something from Star Wars. I don't know.
Yes. That's where all the clones are made.
Yes, I did it. I believe it's that.
It's close to that if it's not that exactly.
Yeah, who cares?
And I'm probably gonna be like much in the same spot as you. Like this card's good. I don't know where it goes. I don't know what you make with it.
I mean, I think you want to build with this card. I think this card makes you want to build.
Yeah, and I think it's obviously a good thing. But then you're like, well, you're probably not green white because you probably still want Tristani. So like, where are we looking? Maybe this is a white-black card to some degree or something like that. Who knows?
There are definitely some cards in white-black right now, especially some of the vampires from Ixalan that work well with this, that come back from your graveyard with based on life gain and things like that. So you can set up some shenanigans where you can find a way to have creatures to cast, even though because this is sort of top of your curve as well. Mm-hmm. So you want to make sure you have creatures to cast afterwards. But this could also be the kind of thing where you're playing the sort of, you say white-black, the sort of fabled Wrath white deck, the Wrath creature deck, where you are trying to bait them into creatures, and then on 4, you Kaya's Wrath them, on 5, you drop this. So, I don't know. Next up, I do want to give a quick shout-out here to Grateful Apparition, because Kaya definitely high-fives ghosts. And that's the sweetest 2-drop in my Dovin Brawl deck you've ever seen.
Yeah, it's disgusting. If you don't know what it is, it's Thrumming Bird, but white.
Flyer that does a little proliferating.
I think it's a little bit better because if you can hit planeswalkers with it too.
That is true.
So you can if you hit a planeswalker, it also proliferates.
All I know is I'm going to high five that ghost. All right, our actual next card though is Ignite the Beacon, which is 4 generic and a white for an instant. Search your library for up to 2 planeswalker cards, reveal them, put them into your hand, and shuffle your library. So when I first saw this card, because this is one of the first ones they spoiled, I was like, okay, whatever. We've seen this kind of card before. After seeing the whole set, I think this card is better than I thought it was going to be. Mm-hmm. As an instant speed card, it's certainly appealing. And with so many, granted, I don't know which ones you want, but so many, besides Gideon. Gideon's the one I want for sure. But with so many 3 CMC planeswalkers, you could conceivably end a turn, get 2 planeswalkers, and cast them both on your turn. Yeah. And, there's so many... This is what I like about this set, because there's so many moving parts here. I don't know what role Proliferate actually plays in this set. In Standard in general, I don't know what it actually does. Is it just making Planeswalkers unbelievable? Maybe it is. But I think this card setting up an end of turn, go and getting, some. I don't know. I don't even know what the best combination of Planeswalkers is.
Go get Gideon and the new Teferi. Seems fine.
Yeah, that. Oh, and you can probably untap and play both of those.
Yeah.
That seems pretty good.
Yeah.
So I think like again, maybe it could be a card that does nothing, but instant speed, letting you go search and untapping, that seems appealing to me. So I think this card has a chance. In commander formats, this is bonkers.
Yeah, I mean this feels good even like in Brawl
Yeah.
or something like that. So
Yeah, if you're already playing your Deploy the Gatewatch deck, like you wanted this card.
yes. So. After that, we have
Parhelion. Oh, never mind.
No, it's Prison Realm, which sounds like much more like
it's definitely a Netflix show.
Right. It sounds like where cards in Yu-Gi-Oh go.
That's Nicol Bolas is just going to be there. He's like, I brought you Yu-Gi-Oh cards. Why? I don't want these.
No one does. Prison Realm is 2 generic and a white for an enchantment. And it says, when Prison Realm enters the battlefield, exile target creature or planeswalker an opponent controls until Prison Realm leaves the battlefield. And it says, when Prison Realm enters the battlefield, scry 1. So it's a... was it Thopter Rest-esque kind of card?
Yeah.
Obviously you're still missing on, some tricky permanents, but you do get a pretty good, like, planeswalkers and creatures are frequently like the things that you want to get rid of in this manner. And you do get a little bit of extra value when it comes in. So I would say this is out of like the kind of effects that we get from this, because you don't just get Overing anymore. That's a 4-mana ability now. This is probably one of the better ones just because you have a little bit of an upside.
Yeah, and when you look at Standard right now, we do have already 4-mana versions of it in Conclave Tribunal, which does, can be cheaper, but
and Ixalan's Binding.
And Ixalan's Binding, which has a great effect, but we've seen 4-mana be sort of an issue on that card. So I don't know how much Scry 1 means here, but the mana probably means a lot. So it'll see play.
Yeah.
I'm skipping Ravnica at War, just so you know, which is exile all multicolored permanents. Whenever we see a card like this, it doesn't tend to do much, and I don't think there's a deck right now in Standard that screams this. So unfortunate. The next card though is Single Combat, which is 3 generic white for a sorcery. Each player chooses a creature or planeswalker they control, then sacrifices the rest. Players can't cast creature or planeswalker spells until the end of your next turn. So, and if you haven't seen this card for some reason yet, this is pretty insane art. Go look it up because this is the Sorin and
Sora's here?
Yeah.
with Donald
boy.
and Goofy?
The Sorin and Nahiri battle. I just love the idea they get sucked to Ravnica. And
I just
like,
assume like,
hey, do you see the dragon doing the Elder spell over there? And they're like, what? We're real sweaty.
I mean, this is going to be... I'm excited to read this part in the book.
Oh, yeah.
Because these two are just, like, the most selfish, awful people. To be like,
Sorin's like a vampire and he has been for a long time, so do you expect anything different?
No.
And Nahiri got trapped in a rock for a long time, so she just wants him to be in a rock still.
I mean, that's fair. So, this card is really good.
Yeah, I think so too. We have precedent for this card being very, very good, and that's because we had Tragic Arrogance.
Tragic Arrogance was, a pretty popular card when it was in, legal and standard for a few different decks. I know Green White was like the main spot where that got played, if I am recollecting correctly.
Yeah, the only issue here is obviously the players getting to choose is fine, and this has the downside of not dealing with something that's a real problem. Like if they're Teferi's about to ultimate. This doesn't stop that, and that's a problem. But if you are trying to like protect your one thing, your one planeswalker, your Teferi, well, this stops them from throwing a creature down or something that might do it. And if you're trying to win the Teferi war, well, now next turn they can't play theirs and take it down on yours. It's very powerful.
The silence effect that is tagged onto this is pretty absurd. This is like the first time that we have kind of had a spell that does that and acts like a removal spell, and I think that's an interesting like line to take. In all honesty, I would like to see something like this maybe at a single target level to be like kill target creature or planeswalker. They can't cast. They can't cast that type again until your next turn.
I will say this: we had Reflector Mage and. That was tough.
Yeah, well, so the Reflector Mage was bad at instant speed. This being sorcery speed is a little bit better. And I would like the spell that I proposed also would not be at instant speed because that effect is busted.
Yeah. I will say that comparing it back to Tragic Arrogance, and I went back and looked just to make sure, but you got to pick on Tragic
Yes.
Arrogance, and like not getting to pick here, like I said, causes problems. But I do think it's still powerful enough as, and there's a lot of decks. You said maybe it's the mono white catcher deck that wants a wrath that leaves something behind.
That's true.
So
it's also important that even something like Tragic Arrogance got artifacts and enchantments as well,
that is
right?
true. That is true.
Just food for thought. But again, I think that silence, clause,
its power level is there. It just is. The power level's there.
Important. So, next up we have
last one for white.
Tomic or Tomic, Ptolemy. Tomic, Distinguished Advocate.
Tommy.
Tommy, yes. White for a 2/3, legendary creature, human advisor, with flying. And it says lands on the battlefield and land cards in graveyards can't be the targets of spells or abilities your opponents control. It says your opponents can't play land cards from graveyards. So this is seemingly a plant for, a Death and Taxes deck. Specifically, specifically for older formats. You look at Legacy, you look at Turbo Depths or Lands or something like that, and they don't want to see this card.
No. I will say, power level wise, I don't think it's very far off in Standard. Just 2 mana for a 2/3 flyer is good.
Yes,
it's a good body. It's evasive. Do I think its ability will do anything in Standard? No, but I guess it does stop them from Field of Ruining your. The last fort or something like that,
right?
So,
yeah, and I'm trying to think of like other things that are in Standard.
I mean, again, now could it be a plant for something? Maybe, but
right.
It definitely is. It has immediate impact and definitely Legacy if it wants to. I think in Standard, if you see play, it just slots in a 2 mana slot in the white weenie deck. So. Because 2/3 is just a good body and flying is good.
Yeah, and you can even look at this, and I know some other people talked about this, that they thought that maybe Crucible Worlds being in Standard would have been more of a bigger impact, but it clearly is not.
Yeah, there's not enough ways to get lands into the graveyard consistently.
Right. So maybe this was them hedging their bets on that.
Right. I do want to mention why this card is flying, because I learned it from listening to the Vorthos cast. He rides a gargoyle.
Yeah,
that's amazing.
He's a gargoyle in the background.
That's so good. He rides that gargoyle everywhere. So,
but yeah, so that's going to be the end of white. There are some more interesting like story cards and stuff like that you can go look through, and if you haven't had a chance to take a look at, but we aren't going to discuss necessarily.
No, I mean the art direction was great, but yeah. There's not much else here.
But I mean, white got I think quintessentially probably the best planeswalker.
Oh, in this set, I think for sure
it's tough. I think the 2 monocolored mythic planeswalkers are probably the 2 best cards.
Yeah, they're very good. I don't. Yeah, Liliana's great, and again, I think Nicol Bolas is pretty good. But this 3 mana, like I have a 4/4 every turn. Plus, I get to do other relevant things. Like the turn you -6 something, you can still attack for 4.
Yeah.
Why does Gideon get to do both? Hey, I destroyed your best creature. Once again, I'm attacking for 4.
So if he is at 7, I don't think.
If he's at 7,
okay.
you could still attack.
I think so. I think if he has 0 loyalty counters,
attack and then second main.
Oh yeah, I guess that's true. Yes, that's true.
But no, I'm assuming you got to 6 loyal, so you can get to 7, and it won't be an issue. So
more than likely. But yeah, as far as other things, I mean, again, we got some cards to talk about from white, so I think like it definitely got some new tools to upgrade some existing decks and maybe push one into the archetype, into the realm, I should say. So next up we have blue.
Blue, we're also starting with a reprint.
Yeah, it's Augur Bolus. And it says...
You read the last one.
Okay, fine.
Don't do this. I'll just go home if you're going to take all of it.
No, that's really
You can
boring.
do Palooza by yourself.
I don't want that.
Yeah,
no.
I know. That's why I'm threatening it.
No one wants that.
Augur Bolus is reprint generic in a blue for a 1/3 creature merfolk wizard. When it enters the battlefield, look at the top 3 cards of your library. You can reveal an instant or sorcery card from among them, put it into your hand, put the rest on the bottom of your library in any order.
This card just says, look at the bottom 3 cards of your library. Congratulations, you played Augur Bolus.
I've been playing a lot of Pauper recently and teaching some people how to play.
Oh, yeah. Well, he's better in that format.
It just hits like every spell you want all the time. Like, it hits accumulated knowledge all of the time, and then it's great. But, in standard we have a deck already that is geared towards having tons and tons of spells,
Yeah,
which
we
is
have
interesting.
blue, red, Drakes or Phoenix or what have you.
And any other variant to that now with Saheeli, there's a couple ways for that. Whether this is a main deck card or even a sideboard card, we've seen that in the past too. Just a 1/3 with relevant text that can block. I do think it's pretty interesting because they have worked pretty hard to avoid the wording that's on Augur of Bolas, which is the any order.
Yes,
Because in Arena, I don't think there's any cards right now that do that.
No, I think they're all random.
I think they pretty much are all right. I know that while playing Arena, I've never had to choose which order to put the cards into my. So this will cause some templating that they're going to have to adjust to, which is going to happen either way. It was going to happen eventually with reprints, but I think it's interesting to see them go with that. But yeah, I think it was in standard. Now, granted, it was in standard the last time we had Delver, so it was pretty good. But I mean,
Correct.
I think this always has a chance to be pretty solid in a lot of decks. So I'm glad to see it back.
All right. Next up is Commence the Endgame. Before we get that, quick shout out to Callous Dismissal or Mini Manowar, as some have noted. But yeah, Commence the Endgame is 4 generic blue for a instant. And it says the spell can't be countered. It says draw 2 cards, then amass X, where X is the number of cards in your hand. This card is not busted. It's pretty good though. This card is pretty good. I wouldn't say busted.
6 mana to draw 2 cards isn't busted.
No.
So
this I was telling Mike, this kind of reminded me of Dragon Lord's Prerogative in a lot of ways. Or some people are comparing it to Mole Drifter or Torrential Gearhulk, depending on how optimistic you are.
Yeah, I mean, like at worst, paying 6 mana for an instant Mole Drifter, I'm A-okay with that. Now, of course, you don't get the things like flickering and that kind of stuff, but I think if you're playing the deck in this card in a way that it's closer to Torrential Gearhulk, where as I think we mentioned before, it's always targeting like Hieroglyphic Illumination or something like that.
Glimmer of Genius,
It's not Glimmer because that's Scrytune.
Oh, fair enough. But Illumination,
yeah, that's why, or Inspiration is the original. So like,
sure.
it targets. But either way, like if you just get to like flash this in, block a creature with it, and draw 2 cards, like if you're getting, a 3-for-1 out of this, that's real good. Now, it can't be countered. People are going to play for it, like so you have to be set up for it. And we've seen a card like Nightmare Weaver. Is that what it is? Nightmare Weaver. The 4/3 with flash.
Dream Eater.
Nightmare Weaver? Where was that? That's Ashiok. Anyways, but we've seen that card not see much play and be at least a little bit similar in what it can do. So I'm interested to see what deck wants this, but I'm assuming there's decks that already want this.
Yeah, definitely. And they, this is something where you already mentioned the Bant decks that want to play the white X spell. The Bant decks probably also wouldn't mind just playing this and continuing to
attack with it. Yeah,
continue to go off. And there's a bunch of decks that just want to have an instant speed thing that they can do. With a lot of mana potentially, so whether that's a Simic deck or like Simic Reclamation. Now I don't have to play red because I have a way to generate a threat that can end the game.
Right.
So it's an interesting card, and it's definitely a card I can see getting a heavy amount of play.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that at all. Next up is Fibblethip, the Lost. I think I tried my best on that one. Fibblethip, whatever. Emotep, the Lost. This is a generic and a blue for a legendary creature, Homunculus. It's a 1/1. It says whenever it enters the battlefield, draw a card. If it entered from your library or was cast from your library, draw 2 cards instead. Whenever it becomes a target of a spell, shuffle it back into its owner's library. When I first saw this, that's kind of cute, and there's some ways you can abuse it. Technically, in Standard, you could play it with Experimental Frenzy.
Yes.
Which is kind of nifty. But there is actually a deck floating around that was already a fringe deck that a couple of people have been working on before, which was a historic mill deck that this becomes a pretty huge piece in right out the gate. So whether or not there's a lot of issues with the deck as far as like where it sits in the metagame, and also the write-up that I saw about the deck, the creator of the deck is unsure if you could actually play it on Arena or not, because we don't know what a combo deck looks like that with your rope. Because you're always going to lose a little bit of time on your rope, so you've got to go pretty quick.
theoretically, I don't. So I was watching. They had a preview stream, um, on Arena today for all the new War of the Spark cards, and I was watching Todd Anderson. He was playing a Rouseric combo
Oh, was he
deck.
playing the infinite combo?
He was, and he was going off, and it seemed that his rope wasn't
Like because it
triggering.
Was, okay, interesting.
So it seemed like he had probably done, I would say, like 5 or 6 loops of it.
Oh, interesting.
But before his opponent conceded.
Right.
So I don't know if maybe they've adjusted that if you are taking game actions of some persuasion or not. But from what I observed, it felt like the rope should have kicked in, but didn't.
Okay, interesting.
But again,
I'm interested to see what it looks like.
That's just for me looking at a stream.
I know. I'm trying to remember the name of the person who the article I'm referencing, and I apologize. It's off the top of my head. It was sent to me by a friend of ours. There is a list of it, and that guy is attributed in Sam Black's most recent article, or at least the week before this as well. So it's out there, and it's an interesting deck. It does require you to own a playset of Mox Ambers, which is, well, those spiked, and I don't know. Gideon's the closest thing to making you want to play one, but like still no. But I think Philip is the kind of card where when you do, if it's in play or it's in someone's deck, that deck probably isn't doing nice things.
No,
I don't mean that. I don't think that card is necessarily broken by itself, but I don't think the deck that's running it is trying to do fair things.
You're not trying to draw this card and cast it for 2 mana and draw a card. Like,
I mean, the sad thing is that's the floor though.
That is the floor.
Like I love that as the floor.
Sure,
but it being legendary is also a historic trigger for the historic combo deck. So
right, and you might be playing this in a Vivian's Arcbow deck.
That's fair as well,
or a Vanifar deck. There's a lot of different ways that you can play this card and get value from it. And it's cool. It's flavorful. It is theoretically hard to kill if you're trying to kill it with spells. And it finding its way back into your library is pretty handy.
It just shows up at times when it's very lost. So
exactly,
very flavorful. I love the art on it too, where it's just like there's like Eternals everywhere, and he's just like, I don't know what's going on.
A lot of people are upset that he is blue in color and not his proper green color, which is frustrating, and I can understand that for sure.
Never been frustrated by that. Didn't know what color it was.
He was, yeah.
Colors are a construct of man. Not my eyes, apparently.
But yeah, so there's that card.
The next green card.
The next card we have is Finale of Revelations, our second in the finale cycle. And it is a blue X for a sorcery. It says draw X cards if X is 10 or more. Instead, shuffle your graveyard into your library, draw X cards, untap 5 lands. You have no maximum hand size for the rest of the game. Exile Finale of Revelation. I feel like if this is over 10, like the game's like, no, you're doing this now instead. More game actions for you.
It is, so when you cast a spell like this on Magic Online anyways, the game will do a hard reset. So this is already doing it for you. I think this is the worst finale.
Yeah, I think so too. This is, we just talked about a draw spell that's way better than this already.
Yeah, and that's unfortunate. I think like this again. This is another thing being a sorcery that makes it just tough. Now again, maybe the Wilderness Reclamations want a draw X spell that they can play on their first main and go forward, but I just don't see it. I don't see it.
And it's hilarious when you even look at that, because it's like this card says untap 5 lands. You're like, bro, you already printed an enchantment that lets me untap all my lands every turn, and I don't have to pay 10 mana. I don't have to pay 12 mana to do that.
To do it.
So, no, hard pass on this finale.
Yeah, I unfortunately have to agree. The next card is Flux Channeler, which helped create the Flux
Capacitor.
There it is. 2 generic and a blue for a 2/2 human wizard. It says whenever you cast a non-creature spell, proliferate. That is a powerful text box, and I have no idea what it means. This is one of those cards that I look at it, I put it on the list because, whoever harnesses this, who's ever doing like something with this, I think that's going to be awesome. I don't know what deck that is. Things that I want to see like this with. Obviously, there's planeswalkers that it could work well with this. Creatures with counters on them in some fashion. I don't know where this goes. Maybe it doesn't see any play. Maybe it does nothing. But that text box is powerful.
For sure.
So, I don't know.
I don't know either.
It's whenever you cast a non-creature spell, too. So, like, when you cast planeswalkers into this, you proliferate. I don't like. I want to understand. I want to understand how best to use this. Teach me. Somebody teach me how to use this card.
I don't know.
In a fashion that is unfair.
I want people to make bad choices in their infect decks to play this card.
Oh yeah, yeah.
That won't happen, but
No,
I can't imagine that being the secret sideboard tag instead of this we'll play 2/2 and then
you just hit them with one and then
we just gotta hit them once. Oh man. Next up is God Eternal Kefnet. God Eternal Kefnet is 2 generic blue for a legendary creature zombie god. And it has flying, and it is a 4/5. And it says when you may reveal the first card you draw each turn as you draw it. Whenever you reveal an instant or sorcery card this way, copy that card, and you may cast this copy. The copy costs 2 generic less to cast, and then it has the god text.
Santa Claus.
Yeah, the god clause.
I think this card's really, really powerful. I think maybe it's less straightforwardly powerful than Kefnet. I'm sorry, than Oketra.
Yeah.
But a 4/5 flyer for 4 is already pretty good.
Yeah.
And depending on if you have a way to manipulate the top of your deck at all, this gets gross.
I think this card is a strong contender just on its CMC. For mana, it's cheaper than all the other gods. And it does some pretty absurd things. There are ways that you can obviously brainstorm is pretty being able to brainstorm with this card is pretty good. So it combos well with another 4 mana card in Jace the Mind Sculptor, I guess. And you obviously, just like Oketra, you definitely have to build your deck around it.
But unlike Oketra, you just need to draw a card each turn to do it. You don't have to have more creatures.
Correct.
You just have to have. Granted, you want to hit spells, but
yeah.
Your floor then is your 4/5 flyer a turn ahead of Oketra. So I know I mentioned this in our show chat, but taking turns really likes this card. I've already seen a bunch of people because with a Jace the Mind Sculptor and Kefnet, you just need 1 Time Warp on top of your library, and you can brainstorm to keep it there forever, and you can take all of the turns.
You sure can.
So, and you just attack them for 4 until they're gone.
Oh, and it's weird because it's 3rd from the top, and then so if they kill it, you just brainstorm with Jace
and have it again.
Weird. Weird how that all works out.
So yeah, I understand it needs a $150 card to make it better, but
who cares?
I think
you're gonna get. I mean, they already announced the Mythic Edition. They're gonna. You can just buy that and have at least you're part of the way there. You get one Jace the Mind Sculptor.
I think even in something like Is It Drake's, this could be something that starts taking over some of the 4-drop slots.
Mm-hmm.
You know, in some number, maybe because it's legendary, just because it survives Lava Coil, which has been the number 1 way to combat Crackling Drakes.
Very true.
And 2, it just gets so much value.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, something like an opt, isn't getting a cost reduction.
No,
it's
but you're just getting a free opt.
Correct.
You're getting another opt without having to actually cast the opt.
Right.
The best part is you can cast or copy the opt, right? Hold on here. You reveal it whenever you reveal an instant sorcery card this way. Okay, you already drawn it. Okay, good.
Yeah.
So oh gosh, man, that's really good.
Yeah.
Either way, it's really good. Yeah, I think Kefnet's very powerful. And again, it could spawn a new spells deck. It just could be, maybe it's not Arclight Phoenix, but it could be something. So next up is a 4-mana Jace, but it's not that 4-mana Jace.
It's far from that 4-mana Jace. Jace, Wielder of Mysteries.
If you keep taking mine out of my mouth, I'm going to go real mad.
Jace, I'm just saying the name.
No, you started to say the CMC too. Don't even start.
Sometimes I get lost at whose turn it is.
No, I don't. Only you. Forever only you.
I said I said me. I claimed responsibility for my actions.
Yoko's breaking up the band. Jace, Wielder of Mysteries. Okay, I was waiting for you to break in there again.
No.
1 blue for a 4 loyalty legendary planeswalker Jace. If you would draw a card while your library has no cards in it, you win the game instead. +1, target player puts the top 2 cards of their library into their graveyard, draw a card. -8, draw 7 cards. Then if your library has no cards in it, you win the game. So we've already had a card like this printed once before.
Yep.
Laboratory Maniac. It's currently an uncommon. And here's Jace. 4-mana tick up draw card. Seems fine.
Mm-hmm.
Does the rest of the text make it good enough to see play?
No, this card's bad. This card makes me want to build a Psychic Corrosion Brawl deck and just make everyone angry. Yes, I'm in for that.
And so like what this psychic corrosion and all of the
It's what figure it out.
it's all the little advisors that
Yeah.
mill.
Gosh.
But you mill you.
Yeah. But yeah, this card is not good.
Yeah, I don't disagree. The 3 blue on its casting cost just means like even the decks that might want to try it out, how are you going to cast it? How are you going to cast this card? So it's unfortunate. I was hoping that Jace, who's obviously such a big part of the story, was going to have a little bit better card. And it's they couldn't have put the Mind Sculptor here, even though he technically is that character again. But it's fine.
I wish that they would stop pigeonholing Jace into like being the guy that's like no like mill or no cards in library or just like
you know why that is though, right? Because manipulating the library is how you show that someone's smart and how they affect mental things, not by discarding.
I'm not going back to this argument, but he is like even when they gonna go back to making good Jaces? They made that one good Jace.
I don't know.
That one good Shadows over Innistrad Jace. That was fun.
Also, why is this Jace so slight? Didn't he get super beefy on Ixalan? like there's like definitely moments in the Ixalan story where Vraska's like, whoa, look at those muscles. And now here he is again. He weighs 90 pounds.
He's very slender.
So he's a slender man, and he definitely dresses like a slender man. So yeah.
I don't know. I mean, maybe ad nauseum we'll figure it out. I don't know. Probably not, though.
No. I also want to quickly mention in conjunction with this, we're not talking about Jace's Triumph because for that card to see play, you have to convince me there's a Jace good enough to have in play ever. But Jace and Jace's Triumph looks like one of the many, many, many villains I had to kill on my way to beating Kingdom Hearts 3.
Jace is just part of Organization 13. Cool.
I don't know which version of... I don't even know which character at this point he is anymore. Erasmus. That's his new... That's the new Kingdom Hearts villain. So, I got nothing.
You got to figure out what his name looks like with an X somewhere, and then you got to reorganize it.
Oh, right.
Yeah. We'll get back to you.
Jake's? I would say just Jax, but that's a Mortal Kombat character. And Jace with metal arms sounds great.
Anyway.
Do you remember the second Mortal Kombat movie where they had Jax and he had metal arms, but at one point they pulled the metal arms off him and he had regular arms underneath that?
They were just
I was like,
armored?
that's not how this works. Those are new arms. You can't just put those on your arms and call them robot arms. It's cheating.
And hey, and look, we're here today, year 2019. Mortal Kombat 11 is just about to come out. So
well, I want to know about Jackson's arms.
Still going
is Jax in
strong.
Mortal Kombat 11?
He is.
Sick. What kind of arms he got?
I think robot arms.
Yes.
I'm not sure.
Are they again? Are whatever?
I don't know. You got to rip him off Jax. Find Jax and rip off his arms.
Armtality.
All right. And this one's mine now, right?
Yes.
Legitimately. Okay, so I do want to say Kasmina's Transmutation is the card.
Yes, I think,
and it does lose all abilities.
I think Kasmina's close as well.
Sure.
But 4 mana for that is probably not great.
Yeah.
So Lazatep plating is literally the Jax arms we're talking about.
That's true. Lazatep plating is 1 blue for an instant, 1 generic blue for an instant. It says amass 1, and it says you and permanents you control gain hexproof until end of turn. So we obviously we've seen this stuff before. We've seen something like Mizium Skin, and we have Dive Down right now. It's important that this targets you though. So we don't have there are some theoretically discard spells that you can save yourself from with this, but it also saves you from a Banefire, which normally isn't uncounterable.
There are some other cases with this card. The more I read this card, it is a card that our friend Dave, former host of the show, was kind of high on for Cube, and it caused me to read the card and look at the instances. I think when you look at Standard right now, we're getting at least one Diabolic Edict effect as well.
Yeah.
Which is your target player sacrifices a creature.
And we just talked about Gideon.
Also making people sack. And when you look at decks like Mono Blue, which may or may not still survive, and decks that are trying to protect and Mizzet, not only does this counter the first sack, but the amass 1 protects you from the next one.
Yeah.
Which I think is really, really interesting and something I wasn't thinking of. Diabolic Edict, the ability to make a 1/1 in response to that. Like, okay, counter the first one, and now I've just got this 1/1 that, what, are you going to waste a removal spell on? Well, you're going to have to, I guess.
Yeah.
So
you don't really have much of a choice.
I do. 2 mana makes this a little bit of a tough sell for me. But even I think even against mono red, like, they cast a spell, you get to make a 1/1 that can block their Viashino Pyromancer.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, that's so it's possible this card sees a fair amount of play, which I think when I first read this card, I wasn't very high on it, but now I see where it can go, which is cool. Next up, we get Narset, Parter of Veils. This is 1 generic blue for a 5 loyalty legendary planeswalker Narset. Her static ability is each opponent can't draw more than 1 card each turn. -2, look at the top 4 cards of your library. You may reveal a non-creature, non-land card from among them and put it into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order.
So the -2 is Kanta, the Sunken Ruin activation.
Yep.
Which is all right.
The real show here with her, and honestly, the uncommon planeswalkers that have made the cut as far as us talking about are, do they have an impactful static ability? And that's an impactful static ability.
Yeah.
Like, there's already a number of like combo-esque ways you can work with this card in older formats so that you can force people to draw extra cards on your turn, and then they're like, oh, well, I'm going to draw these cards, or you get nothing. But even in standard, like, having this out in play, like, Teferi Tick-Ups don't work.
Right.
Commence the end game is something you won't be able to do. You can't Expansion Explosion and draw a million cards.
You can draw 1.
Yeah, so I think that's pretty important. So when actually, let me think about this. What if they deal the damage to this? You draw cards and then you deal X damage, right? So order is important. So you would not be able to hurt Narset with that, or you wouldn't be able to draw cards off of it. You could still deal X damage to Narset. But I think there's enough things in standard where I could see this being a sideboard card that just comes in against certain decks, especially the decks that just want to play a bunch of Chemist's Insights and go, oh no. When I look at a deck like blue green Nexus, especially on Magic Arena where the deck is pretty prevalent, some of the lists run Blink of an Eye. A lot of them don't. How do they interact with this card when they try to go off? They have to go off with search. Because their lands no longer function the way they want them to,
right?
And they can't just Chemist's Insight their way out of these things. So I think there are enough decks in standard that this is a powerful effect. And older formats, turning off Brainstorm is a pretty big deal in and of itself. So I think that static ability is powerful.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
Whether or not the -2 is important depends on what you're doing and how you're building your deck. But
I mean, like, a lot of these, when you're looking at these uncommon planeswalkers, a lot of them are sideboard cards in the first place. So, this is a
for
sideboard.
constructive purposes. For
yeah. So, you look at this and you're like, okay, I could see this siding in against my control matchups. And then, like, that's pretty good. Like, if you land this and are able to minus it in a, against a deck that's going to have a hard time dealing, like, 3 damage to it at an instant speed, then it's like, awesome. Then I get a search for as Kanta ability or a as Kanta's Sunken Ruin activation, and as we know, like, that's where those Esper mirrors end up.
Especially when you are like that -2 gets even better when you're boarding this in with other sideboard cards, because more likely you're going to find those sideboard cards with it.
Yes.
So yeah, I think Narset's fine. And her spell is kind of neat.
Yeah. It is.
Do you see how I set you up for that? Because I knew it was your turn.
Because
I'm a good teammate.
I appreciate it.
Okay,
I do.
Okay.
Sometimes I'm not a good teammate. Narset's Reversal is blue, instant. It says copy target instant or sorcery spell, then return it to its owner's hand. You may choose new targets for the copy. So like, it's kind of like a remand. You don't get to draw a card, but you get their card. This can also target your cards, theoretically. So if you just want to, get a card back and also cast that card still for this, like, turn this card into a, like a jump start from your hand, basically. If it's an instant or sorcery, which all jump starts are. So that's the way this can also work. But yeah, it's interesting. Bouncing spells is something they tried with Unsubstantiate, obviously tried with, Remand or Venser, stuff like that. So we've seen this sort of effect a few times over now, and it's had varying power level. But I don't know. Well, this is, again, another one of those things you see is like, oh, this is a sideboard card for sure.
Yeah, well, there's at least one deck that I can think of that would use this card. That might be Storm. Storm plays Remand to reset its own, like, grape shots pretty often, and this getting a copy of the grape shot and then getting the grape shot back is pretty fine.
Right.
The Remand does more work in the main than this card does. The frustrating thing about this card is that the places where I want to see it, some of the spells that you'd want to cast it on aren't going to be helpful. You know, if I'm playing this in, like, say, mono blue or something, and they cast a Wrath, well, great. I don't want that.
I don't want that.
But when this card is good, this card will be obscene. Like essentially counter your spell, and I'll take it. Yoink.
Yeah, something where this is hilariously effective against is Dovin's Veto, because that card isn't counterable, but it sure does bounce back to hands fairly easily. So be wary of that.
Oh man, so they play a spell, you counter it. They Dovin's Veto your counter, and you're like, I'm gonna copy the Dovin's Veto. I'm going to counter your original spell. I'm going to put that Dovin's Veto back in here. Get out of here.
Get out of here.
So,
go back later, I guess.
I guess you could just counter the original spell, but I don't care.
The point here.
No. So it's a cool one. I don't know what it really does, but we are skipping the submarine, by the way.
Yeah, because the card's bad.
Yeah, it's not a good card.
Yeah, we got ruined. We got completely ruined by Smuggler's Copter. They can't print a card that kind of has sort of similar text to Smuggler's Copter and expect us to be like, no. We know what the pinnacle of that card looks like now. You can't make any more like that. You can't. The most notable thing is, hey, there's vehicles that are in here, and we're going to talk about one, I assume, in red.
One vehicle. We made the cut.
But the next one is what? Spark Double is our last one.
Is it our last one? Oh man, already done with blue. So sad. Spark Double, 3 generic and a blue for a creature illusion. You may have Spark Double enter the battlefield as a copy of a creature or planeswalker you control, except it enters with a extra +1/+1 counter on it if it's a creature, and an extra loyalty counter on it if it's a planeswalker. And it isn't legendary if that permanent is legendary. So this is our usual, like, 4 mana for a clone slot.
Yeah, and like they've been, obviously we had the Imposter, which could be could copy a planeswalker. But you wouldn't want to copy, obviously, your planeswalkers because they would, when it was legal, it was still bad.
Right. But
being able to use this to copy one of your own planeswalkers is interesting for sure. I don't know
if I actually said that. Yeah, it is something you control. My bad.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Copy of a creature or planeswalker
you control. Fair enough. So obviously, you're not going to be copying your opponent's stuff. It's going to be stuff that you have, which, does adjust how you are going to, be looking at this clone. These clone effects are, I don't know. It's been a while since we've seen a good clone, and the last time I think we saw a good clone see a lot of play was it cost 3 mana and could copy artifacts.
The Vizier saw a fair amount of play.
Yeah, I guess that's
true. You could embalm it, which was important.
Yes, it had multiple lives.
Yeah, the tantalizing proposition of having like 2 Teferis in play is there, but whenever you have a clone that can only copy your stuff, the floor is what do you have in play. So there are multiple times where you wish it was anything else because you have nothing in play. So, but I could see it being a part of something kind of gross, or an interesting card to play in sort of a Vanifar deck.
Yeah, that is true, and that contributed to Phyrexian Metamorph's popularity because it was just a clone that you could fetch with Birthing Pod.
Yeah, and it could become a Birthing Pod.
Very true.
This can become a Vanifar.
Very true.
And then you can have 2 Vanifars.
Okay, so now we got a stew going.
Now we got stew going.
Yeah, you got stew going right there. Yeah, I like that actually. So Vanifar is where I could see that being a relevant card for sure. Yeah, for sure.
That's blue.
And oh man, you're likely playing Kiora in your Vanifar deck. You can just copy your Kiora, and then you still get 2 activations of your Vanifar. Oh, yep, see it. Mm-hmm, yep. All right.
Well,
we came around on it.
I found how Morgan's playing this card.
Came around on it. We found it. You just reminded me of how another card that I liked, how close it is to that.
I mean, that's what I think of when I think whenever clone's good. Clones are good when they're in the chain of what you want to Birthing Pod up to.
100%. All right, so next up, what do you think of blue? I think blue
gets some interesting cards, but
yeah.
outside of Kefnet, nothing that screams like format changing. If that makes sense. Like Kefnet is good, everything else is playable.
I really like Commence the Endgame. I'd say the Kefnet and Commence the Endgame are probably like the 2 top tier.
But the rest of it we talked to is like it's there. If it sees play, it's probably not defining its own archetype, but
no. All right.
I guess maybe Jay says if it's seeing play, it is defining its own archetype, but it's a bad one.
It's not a good one.
But I bought all these levelers.
Okay, good for you, I guess. Leveler was still a combo with other cards that already existed.
But I bought them now.
Now I have 8 Laboratory Maniacs I can play. 8! All right. Next up, we're moving into black. And the first card we have here is Bolus's Citadel, which is 3 generic black, black, black. It's a legendary artifact. It says you may look at the top card of your library at any time. Great. You may play the top card of your library. It's converted mana. Excuse me. If you cast a spell this way, pay life equal to its converted mana cost rather than pay its mana cost. And it has an activated ability, which is tap, sacrifice 10 non-land permanents. Each opponent loses 10 life. That's pretty powerful. And flavorful, for sure. But we know that this kind of effect is good already. We have Experimental Frenzy that is currently in the format, and it is very, very good. This one functions obviously differently. This is one where you are going to have to figure out a way to play this card, but also not die to this card. But it's also nice because this doesn't lock out your hand like Experimental Frenzy does. You're still able to have access to your hand and be able to do stuff that way. But I'm not quite sure. Like 6 mana is a lot to kind of pay. But the nice thing is you cast this, and you get to look at the top, and you could still potentially keep going.
Yeah, just keep going.
Which is not something you necessarily had that advantage with Experimental Frenzy. Or even something like Future Sight was the first time that we've seen this effect.
That's why I want to cast my Fibbletips.
Yeah, of course. But I think this card is potentially broken, and we have precedent for that being the case because we know that free spells are broken. Phyrexian Mana is broken.
Yeah, for sure.
This is giving the top card of your library Phyrexian Mana if you can cast it. Kinda, sorta, I guess.
Yeah.
So I know that the power is there. I don't know what kind of deck takes advantage of it, but free spells are broken. That's always something that you should always remember anytime that a new Magic set comes out. Anything that says you can cast this for free, or pay an alternative cost that your life is a resource, then you need to pay attention to it at the very least.
Yeah, I agree.
Don't let it sneak by you. It's kind of a big building in the middle of Ravnica, so
It's
I don't know.
a lot of the art.
Yeah, I don't know how you'd miss it, honestly, but just in case.
That is one of those things that is so bolus it hurts because that's a video game thing, right? Where it's like, where's the boss live? I don't know, probably that big building. But Nicol Bolas is the character who's like, I need a big building.
I gotta have one.
How else will they know I'm here on their plane? I don't know, maybe the zombies and the dying? Not enough.
Aren't you a big dragon, too?
Didn't you make that giant statue? Yeah, but a giant land monster might destroy it. I need a building.
I need a building.
Oh,
they need to be able to send me mail.
Yeah, exactly.
I need an address.
When I want to see them protesting me, they need a place to collect so I can eat them. Anyways, next up is Bond of Revival. 4 generic and black for a sorcery. Return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. It gains haste until your next turn. So this is a cycle, the Bond cycle, and I do believe this is the only one I mentioned on here. Maybe I mentioned the green one because that one's close.
Yeah, maybe.
But so the bonds were a couple of the guilds coming together. So in this case, Golgari and the Rakdos sort of teaming up. I think this card's kind of interesting, and I've seen people sort of brewing with a couple different ways to build this card, dumping something big into your... We haven't had sort of Reanimator in a while, and I'm not saying that a 5-mana card leads to a pure Reanimator strategy, but there are enough interesting targets and ways you can build a deck, and you're thinking about, even we've seen different Aristocrats builds, something like Butcher Supplier, being in, Standard still... I think this card could be scary. Maybe is Endray's Forerunners come out of your graveyard all of a sudden with haste? Maybe it is. And you could just get value with it. But I think we haven't had a good res spell that does something effective with haste. Because I think Torrent of Souls is the last one I know that specifically said haste.
Yeah, I think that's the last one that specifically said haste. The last time that we had a Reanimator strategy in Standard was the last time we were in Ravnica.
Yeah, that's true.
So it's something that they are wary of, I think, for good reason. Junk Reanimator was pretty good.
Yeah, we're really. Yeah, all of the ones, Humaninator, Junk Reanimator, like
Yeah,
they were all good.
and I don't know if this card is is good enough to break through.
I guess whip decks also count as Reanimator decks.
Yeah,
which
true.
was haste.
Yeah,
so
that's very true. The key with all those decks though was like a repeatable effect.
Right.
You had 2 chances with an Abario Rights. You could continue to whip back things with Whip of Erebos. This being a one shot, obviously, this sticks around. The creature doesn't get exiled like what it did with Whip. But you have to be sure that if this is like what you're doing, that this whatever you're bringing back is probably going to be ending the game. So hence, Forerunners and stuff like that.
I think it's a card you have to respect though, because the deck can be built where this just blows you out.
Yeah,
so
100%.
And I think about standard, I said end race Forerunners, but we have things like Palaka Worm, which Morgan and I can both tell you that card's real devastating to see come back.
Yeah, I don't want a 7/7 trample. My opponent gains 7 life haste coming at me. I'd rather not.
So, but yeah, I think that card can see play.
I do. I before we move on to the next card, I do want, which is what Deliver Onto Evil.
Yes.
I do want to talk about Davriel Rogue Shadow Mage. I know.
No, I'm sorry. Command the Dreadhorde is actually the next card.
Oh, is it actually? Okay, well then never mind.
We can come back to Davriel.
Okay, Command the Dreadhorde, which is a sorcery for 4 generic black. It says choose any number of target creature and or planeswalker cards in graveyards. Command the Dreadhorde deals damage to you equal to the total converted mana cost of those cards. Put them into the battlefield under your control. So this is another revivification spell. It does hit any number of creatures or planeswalkers. You can most certainly deal more than 20 damage to yourself with this card. It does not give you a limit. Much like I really feel the card art does kind of display. It's really Liliana cranked up to 11 there. This is interesting. I think that this technically works with another card in the set. It's Gideon's Sacrifice or something like that.
Yeah. Yes. Is it? It's on here.
Because
it does deal damage to you. Jeez.
Yeah, it says choose a creature, planeswalker you control.
I guess it should work with that card.
All damage that would be dealt this turn to you and permanents you control is dealt to that chosen permanent instead. So this is a way that you could divert that damage.
Yeah, that sounds like bad. Don't do that. That sounds bad.
Listen, it doesn't sound good, but it does sound fun. All right.
Here's where I envision this seeing some play. I'm thinking of think about the Sultai mirrors where you have life totals were pretty high and you're trying to find that breakthrough. Currently, it's find finality and getting back your Hydra Crassus and what have you. But what if it's just look at you're like, oh cool, I'm at 30.
Yeah, I've been gaining a consistent amount of life from these wild growth walkers.
Right.
What do I do with all this life?
And we've been trading resources this whole game. I'm going to spend 10, 15 life, and I have all of your Explorer creatures in play, and I have this and this. I think I don't know if it's a main deck card, but this seems like a mid-range mirror breaker to me.
It's definitely a sideboard card. At the very least. I think you could build your deck towards this card. You could build a self-milled deck to this card. I think the floor is definitely sideboard.
But I agree.
In those mirror matches.
It's very powerful because it's 6 mana. It's not very hard. You have to have a healthy life total. So that's why I say you say the floor is sideboard card. Aggressive decks, you're going to feel bad when you have this card.
You're just going to look at it and be like, well, no, I don't want this.
But yeah, when this card's good, it's going to be bonkers and easily a 3 or 4 for 1. So
I mean, even when I think about it, if you drew this card and you are at CMC, if you could survive casting this for 5 mana and get a Wild Growth Walker back with a Jade Light Ranger,
right?
Even in the mono red mirror, that late enough in the game, that's backbreaking.
That's probably true.
So you still have to be at a reasonable life total to do that. Don't get me wrong. You probably won't be, but there is some really interesting things you can do with this card that almost feel like it's even if you are spending a lot of life, as long as you don't kill yourself, you'll probably get a lot of that back.
Yeah, probably, yeah. Especially in Sultai, but there's other decks that can do this too. But
don't get your Hydra Crassus back with this. By the way, they would die immediately.
Yeah.
So
what do you want to say about Davriel?
I just think that I only bring it up because LSV and Matt Nass brought it up in their top 5 cards in this set for Modern, because this is another rack. This is another sort of that effect.
Yeah, that's fair, and I should have put it on the list for that reason.
So Davriel Shadow Mage, 2 generic black for
Rogue Shadow Mage.
a Rogue Shadow Mage, excuse me. Legendary Planeswalker Davriel. And it says at the beginning of each opponent's upkeep, if that player has 1 or fewer cards in hand, a Davriel Rogue Shadow Mage deals 2 damage to them. And it says it has a minus, which is -1. Target player discards a card. So, this can turn your 8 rack into a 12 rack theoretically. It's worded like Shrieking Affliction, but obviously Liliana is still going to be your go-to. I think I guess
for budget reasons you could maybe want this instead.
Correct, and sometimes you need. Sometimes it's just nice to have that sort of effect in surplus.
Sure.
So that's the only reason to really bring it up.
All right, next up is Deliver Unto Evil, which is a card I mentioned as far as artwork goes. One of my favorites in this set. 2 generic and a black for a sorcery. Choose up to 4 target cards in your graveyard. If you control a Bolas Planeswalker, return those cards to your hand. Otherwise, an opponent chooses 2 of them. Leave the chosen cards in your graveyard and put the rest into your hand. Exile Deliver Unto Evil. So this is Gifts Ungiven for your graveyard. Sometimes you're living the dream with having the Bolas and getting 4 cards sounds great, but I think at its floor, this card is pretty close. Especially depending on what your deck is doing. Just getting the mana cost here is pretty cheap. You got 3 mana, and getting 2 powerful things back is, I think, pretty solid. I've already, not that it matters for Constructed, but I've already started putting these into Brawl decks because, oh man, that sounds great. But I think, we talk about, again, these mid-range mirrors that may or may not exist, but this is that kind of thing where, hey, I'm just going to get some of these best cards back, and maybe that's better than Find Finality. Maybe that's better than just the Find portion of Find Finality. Like, I'm going to target these, these 4 removal spells. I think what's important here is that they don't have to be different cards.
Right.
Normally with gift style cards, they have to be different. This can't. Hey, if you cast 2 or 3 cast downs this game, then pick them all up. You know what I mean? We'll see what's going to happen. So, if there's a deck that can take advantage of it with a Bolas, then that's just icing on the cake. But I think at its base level of getting 2 cards back from your graveyard out of a cultivated list, that feels pretty close to me in power level.
Yeah. It's also important that this is kind of like the triumph of Bolas, because it cares about that Bolas Planeswalker, similar to how the other triumphs care about, like having a Jace.
That's interesting.
Yeah, so kind of an interesting mirror they have, that even the this one isn't a triumph because they wouldn't want to frame it like that, but they still find a way to make you want to have a Bolas Planeswalker when casting a signature spell.
I can't wait to get a print of this, and I'm also getting the playmat for it. So.
Nice. Next up is Dreadhorde Invasion. It is 1 generic and a black for an enchantment. It says at the beginning of your upkeep, you may lose. You lose 1 life and amass 1. You don't get a choice. You have to. And it says whenever a zombie token you control with power 6 or greater attacks, it gains lifelink until end of turn. So obviously this is a way to build a big guy. Theoretically,
Gotta build a bear.
This does have some interactions with other cards in the set, though. So we have the blue black card that you could remove a counter from. Another permanent draw card, so that this could be an engine that helps that survive.
Soul Diviner.
Soul Diviner, or Spark Diviner. Is it Soul or Spark?
It's Soul Diviner.
Okay, but there's a lot of interesting. You do have to figure out a way to make this card work for you. This isn't Bitter Blossom. This isn't going. I don't think this is a card that is going to necessarily be as backbreaking as that card can be.
Not even close.
Getting a flyer every turn, like that is inevitability in a lot of ways.
There is an uncommon Eternal that gives all your zombies flying, or your armies flying, or something like that.
It gives all your zombie tokens flying.
Okay, there you go.
Perfect, we did it. And there's like a whole slew of those sort of generals, for lack of a better term.
They're really interesting. Like, there's a real weird military industrial complex going on with these dead things. So
they're very organized.
I guess Liliana, she's the general, right?
Yeah,
So
it's true.
So if you want better car insurance rates now,
Go Liliana, I guess. Um, but this is still something that is interesting to look at. It does potentially give you something every turn that you can, if you are using that token as a resource of some persuasion.
Yeah, I think that's the key to it. If you can use the token, like if it's aristocrats or whatever else, then yes, I agree with you. But on its own, the blind comparisons to Bitter Blossom, I think, are pretty dead on arrival.
Yeah,
I think this card, if you are just looking to put a card in to get value, this is a bad card.
Mm-hmm.
If you can use a token, it's probably fine. But I think Amass is, outside of a few instances we'll see, like Commence the Endgame or Enter the God Eternals, I don't see this being good enough.
Yeah, and like those are some interesting. Like there's some interesting things that again this combos with. If you can, commence the end game and then untapping them. If you already had a token into play, and then there's a lot of things like these armies they snowball,
right.
Which obviously makes sense. So if there's other things that you can kind of do that give you that benefit, or get you to 6 and try to gain some of that life back, or put your life ahead, like there are ways that you can figure this out, and it's not uncommon with some of the spells that we do have, specifically commence the end game, to be able to suddenly have a giant army,
right?
And then be able to have a giant life leaker on your turn, which is pretty good. So
yeah. Next up is the Elder spell. This is black for a sorcery. Destroy any number of target planeswalkers. Choose a planeswalker you control. Put 2 loyalty counters on it for each planeswalker destroyed this way. And we talked about this card a little bit last week. Flavorfully, it's great. And we haven't gotten a card like this that at 2 mana can do this much to planeswalkers. Just like 2 mana destroy a planeswalker. We've not gotten that text before, and this is any number, which is interesting. That being said, it's incredibly narrow. We've also never seen just a pure planeswalker removal spell before. They always can kill a creature too. So I think this card has almost no chance of seeing play, and if it does see play, it's purely sideboard.
I agree with you. My only caveat is the only reason that I would think it would see play is if you are specifically playing the
Nicol Bolas like combo deck.
Correct.
Yeah, I agree with that.
That is the only other way that I would see this card seeing play.
Which
main deck first and foremost
is a 7 mana
win the
4
game
card combo.
Yeah,
which I mean, to be fair, the planeswalkers you would have to kill would already be in play.
Yeah,
or the legendary creatures. So. Or not legendary creatures, the planeswalkers.
Yeah, planeswalkers.
So it's really a 2-card combo with any generic planeswalkers, but you've got to build your deck in such a way that has that, because you can't count on your opponents to have those things.
No, not at all.
And if your opponent has a legendary creature, then like the Elder spell just kind of goes, oh, oops. So I think it's a sideboard card. Maybe it's a combo card, but cool text box. Glad to see a card that can do this. But unless there is just like a planeswalker deck, which I don't know if we're seeing it or not, this probably won't see too much play.
No, probably not. I do want to give a quick shout out to like Eternal Taskmaster.
It's a good card. I don't know if it sees play, but it's
I only said that because we did mention trying to figure out this, a theoretical black-white deck that wants you to have creatures coming back to your hand, and this is a repeatable way to do it. So
that's true.
Keep an eye on it. Maybe it might not do anything, but hey, it's a 2 mana 2/3.
Yeah, it's a 2 mana 2/3 zombie that works well with lords. So
yeah,
it's there.
So the next card we're going to talk about is another Finale. It's Finale of Eternity. X black for sorcery. Destroy up to 3 target creatures with toughness X or less. If X is 10 or more, return all creature cards from your graveyard to the battlefield. That last text is not most of these cards with the like if X is 10, they are the most worthless pieces of text in my opinion. For Constructed, they are relevant for Commander, I guess, but specifically Constructed, I just don't see them being relevant. That being said, I think this card is actually pretty good.
Yeah, the way that it's worded, that at X equals 2, it's 2 2/2s. At X equals 3, it's 3 3 3. Or it's
always 3,
right?
So it's always 3 creatures.
Sorry, not 2 2. I'm sorry, 3 2/2s. You're right. Sorry, that's not how the scaling works, and you're right. But I think that's pretty powerful, and it's one of those things. I agree with you. The X equals 10 doesn't really matter. That being said, if you're priced into playing this card in your deck, we've all been in those slogs of a game where, well, I actually do have 12 mana. And then you probably just win the game on the spot. So,
for sure, I guess.
The card itself is good enough without that line of text. And if you're playing it consistently, you're probably going to go, oh, yeah, this has more text at least once.
So I feel like that you could probably say that for all of these.
So here's the thing. I think it feels like a Planeswalker Ultimate. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Where
Sure.
you most of the time that's not going to happen, but when it
does.
does, you're glad it had it.
Actually, the only one I think that it actually really doesn't matter is the white one. I think the white one, you could still just get blown up by a Wrath the next turn and be like, cool.
If you make 10 2/2s and you need 10 4/4s in addition to that to also win, what were you doing the whole game? Yeah, I agree with you on that.
That's about the only one. But I do like this card. I think you could compare it to the command, the I forget what it's called, the black command. Like not
Profane Command?
Profane Command, something like that. But it's just like, yeah, obviously being able to target 3 things, you for the most part you're going to get everything on the board.
It feels like that. It also feels like kind of in this. Obviously, is better than that card, but Killing Wave, which was one of Liliana's like signature like spells from the Innistrad block.
Yeah, it was Avacyn Resort, I think, that
which
had that card.
Saw
in it.
minor play, but it was like essentially you pay X and each creature would die unless their controller paid that much life, which I thought was that's pretty interesting. So, but yeah, this card's good. Next up is God Eternal Bontu. 3 generic black for a legendary creature zombie god. Is a 5/6 with menace, and it says when it enters the battlefield, sacrifice any number of other permanents, then draw that many cards, and it has the god / Santa Claus. This is a powerful card for sure. 5/6 with menace is not to be trifled with. That's a big body for 5 mana. The key is going to be how effectively you can use that ETB effect.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you've got the extra permanents, namely tokens, to get rid of, then Bontu's pretty good, and Bontu will then find other Bontus.
Yeah.
Which is pretty great. So, again, we talked maybe there is a Golgari or a Mardu Aristocrats deck that exists, and this is maybe your top end for it. There's a gold uncommon we're going to talk about that's like essentially whenever a player sacrifices a permanent, deal 1 damage to any target.
Yeah.
Like, you have that in play when you cast this. Well, then all of a sudden, if you have this and like Cruel Celebrant, then maybe you just kill him in one shot.
Yeah, it definitely requires you to like build with this card in mind. You're not just like sliding this into, the shells that we already have right now. Like this is going to be a sacrifice deck of a different sort for sure. I don't know. Like of all the gods, this one definitely feels pretty weak.
I don't disagree. Its effect is powerful, but overall, yes, just being a 5/6 with menace, like it's whatever. I will say, like to give some context. So think back to those like black-green Cryptolith decks.
Yeah,
and a lot of those decks were either trying to like Nantuko shade you out, or they were trying to flip I can't think of what it's called, the chapel.
Yeah.
Westvale Abbey.
Trying to get the big demon.
Now plug this into that deck.
Yeah, I mean, and
I think like you could build a deck like that in Standard right now. There's or at least with War, and it might even be Sultai, because if you look at Black and Blue, there's a number of creatures that amass 1 when they come into play for a general creature's cost. So you're like, okay, do I have my 2-for-1s that make tokens? I do. Now, granted, the mass doesn't make excess tokens, but green has your Saproling tokens. You could really build that go wide. Again, maybe it's not enough of a payoff, but I think it's there.
I feel like you need to, at that point in time, then you are probably building with like your temporary Cryptolith, right? Which is Song of Freyalise.
So, yeah, that's probably true.
And that's not as good as Cryptolith, right?
It's not, and of course, like that version is pretty weak to Wrath spells, so maybe it's just not good enough. But I think the text box is powerful. But I agree, out of the 5 gods that we have, the 4 Eternals and
is on the weaker side.
This is on the weaker side. So.
I do want to give a quick shout out to Kaio's Ghost Form. It's a common, but it's a pretty pushed common in my opinion. Just for the sheer fact we've seen this effect before on creatures, but this can target planeswalkers. Also says exile, which is important as well. So I'm going to put this in my Pauper cube because I think it's probably
that's sweet. I like that.
I think it's a pretty interesting effect first of all for Black, and the sheer fact that it protects from exile is actually really important. But I just wanted to kind of point that out as being an interesting Pauper card.
Yeah, sure. Next up, though, is the General.
The General. Is this mine?
Yes.
I'm not stepping on any toes here.
Nope,
Okay.
nope.
Liliana, Dreadhorde General, is 4 generic black for a legendary Planeswalker Liliana. She enters the battlefield with 6 loyalty counters, and she has 3 abilities and a static ability. So the static ability is whenever a creature you control dies, draw a card. It's fine. And it has a +1. Create a 2/2 black zombie creature token. All right. -4. Each player sacrifices 2 creatures. So, what's that card? I forget the name.
Oh shoot, I don't remember. It's from multiple things. I can't remember.
Yeah.
Each player sacrifices 2 creatures. Yeah. So,
And then
it's in Battle Box. That's sad.
I know.
Again, I wipe all the names of cards out of my head to do this. I'm
rough.
sorry.
I'm usually
everybody.
better at this, but I just can't think of it. And then it says, I know the one with Delve, which is Dead Drop.
Yeah, that's only one player though.
Anyway, it says -9, and then has an ultimate -9. Each opponent chooses a permanent they control of each permanent type and sacrifices the rest. Yes, that includes lands. So enjoy your 1 land.
Barter in blood.
Yeah, there we go. Barter and blood. So this card is obviously cool because the -4. Like, it sucks losing 2 creatures, but you're going to draw 2 cards, which is
Right.
an interesting wrinkle that you almost forget about when you're reading the card. You're like, well, that is powerful, but it feels bad, But being able to instantly kind of recoup those cards after doing that puts you so far ahead. Like, this card's just busted. I have a hard time deciding whether this is like the best card or whether Gideon really is. I like them both.
I think the mana cost makes me go Gideon, but this card's powerful.
I think Gideon will probably be the more expensive card over the long run because you'll need 4 Gideons, right?
That's true.
You may only need 1 or 2, maybe 3 Dreadhorde Generals, but
her ceiling is Elspeth, the Sun's champion.
yeah.
So
Yeah, but even I felt like you needed a lot of Elspeth too. Maybe I'm just thinking about the control decks that really potentially you were looking at. I can't remember how they were built, to be perfectly honest. Maybe I'm overestimating how many they actually played in their decks. Anyway, this card's
I know I played 2 to 3.
this card's powerful, and this is obviously this is one of the first cards that we even saw from the set, and I expect to see a lot of it coming into standard, and I expect a lot of people to probably start. In here, all honestly, we have a bunch of decks that are mid range to control decks that they could just be a part of those decks and not really look out of place. So
Bond 2 plays well with what that card's doing too. Just to point that out.
Yes, because those effects would stack.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Next up is Liliana's Triumph. This is a generic and a black for an instant. Each opponent sacrifices a creature. If you control a Liliana Planeswalker, each opponent also discards a card. So this is the one where out of all of them, the tacked on effect feels like okay, discard a card. But that's because I think the base effect is so good, and we haven't seen it in so long.
Right. You had Devour Flesh last time. We had a sacrifice at instant speed.
Right.
At 2 mana specifically. That did this, and a lot of people thought they were going to reprint or put the Diabolic Edict into Modern via Modern Masters,
Modern Horizons.
Modern Horizons, yeah, and they were like, oh no, we're just gonna make a strictly better one.
Yeah, that's where we're at. So which is pretty cool. I think again, there's a lot of ways this effect has been missing, and I think when you look at some of the cards in this set, specifically Commence the Endgame, and also Enter the God Eternals, anything that's putting a big token into play, and also with the new Teferi.
Yeah.
There's a chance for more flash things, and Emergent Zone. Emergent Zone also does this. So the ability to do this at instant speed and get something is pretty good. And again, killing things that you can't really target, like Carnage Tyrant, maybe that's tougher, though we've seen the Eldest Reborn still do a lot of work that way.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is just a solid, good card to have. On 2, it gets the creature you want pretty much all of the time, and later in the game, you can set it up to do to deal with things that other cards may not be able to deal with.
Right.
So,
next up we have Massacre Girl, and Massacre Girl is 3 generic black for a 4/4 legendary creature, human assassin with menace. It says whenever Massacre Girl enters the battlefield. Each other creature gets -1/-1 until end of turn. Whenever a creature dies this turn, each creature other than Massacre Girl gets -1/-1 until end of turn. So this just is a board wrath.
Yeah,
this is a wrath.
It's a wrath where you end up with a 4/4 menace.
Very true. And when this card came out, there was a lot of comparisons to a card that exists in like Hearthstone that does a similar thing. And looking at the card, yeah, this card is kind of just a blatant ripoff. But Hearthstone's kind of a ripoff of Magic, so like, kinda. This card's good. I think it's messed up that Massacre Girl is like here and she's like just killing people, and it's like, hey, yo, we got like this huge dragon god invading our plane and like messing it up.
Yeah,
Can
she's
you
a
just
criminal.
like,
I don't know what to tell you.
could you just like not though? Just for 1 second. Just for 1 second, could you not murder people?
She's the worst part of Rakdos. Like people like
Do you see the zombies that are coated in a super tough metal coating? Or
she may kill zombies too. I don't know.
uh,
I think like
I think there's just people in that picture.
Okay,
but okay.
well, anyways, I think as far as constructive purposes go, this card is pretty powerful. I don't know how often it's a main deck card, but if your opponent has, imagine casting this against a pretty stout white weenie board.
Yeah, I mean, like that's just gonna like it's just gonna keep traveling. Their boards frequently get set up in ways that allow you to continue to chain those -1/-1 effects. That's what Venerated Luxodon. That's what that card leads to. You have a night token, like a creature token. I think the hard part sometimes might be getting that first one,
right?
But this is something that you can can continue to happen, which is like the scary part, right? Because it says whenever a creature dies this turn. So is it only happens when it enters? It's only the ETB, right?
It's only the ETB.
Okay, so fair enough. Never mind.
No.
Oh, that would be terrible.
No.
Anyway, so you can, if this is later in the game, you might have like a stopgap. You can kill another creature and then continue the chain going. So when that happens, so
it kind of reminds me of Lavinia. The Lavinia from the last Ravnica, that has a 4/4 that had protection red and detained all permanent CMC 4 or less or something like that.
Yeah.
Like it came down, kind of mitigated their board, and then you got to attack with a pretty large creature, and that's how this kind of feels too. So I like it.
Ooh, excuse me.
You right there?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Last one for black is Price of Betrayal. Single black for a sorcery. Remove up to 5 counters from target artifact, creature, planeswalker, or opponent. I mentioned this only because it's essentially 1 black, destroy most planeswalkers.
That's true.
I mean, that's really what it is. I don't know if it does much from anything else. Yes, there's some creatures it can kill. It can remove an effect from your opponent. It can take 5 energy from your opponent.
It certainly can, which could be relevant for like the extended arena format. Maybe it can also adjust the amount of counters on a Chalice of the Void. Make that a 0 instead of a 1.
That's true.
Which affects.
Well, it can't do that.
From target artifacts?
Yep, it still can't take a 1 to a 0 because it'll get countered.
Oh, well, yeah, 2, I guess. Dang it, Chalice of the Void, you got me again. Well, maybe if your opponent doesn't, you gotta
do the chalice.
You gotta check them, and then if they say yes, then you got it. But yeah, you're right.
I just think 1 mana to destroy most planeswalkers is pretty important.
Yeah. And this being more versatile, that is also the other case. So maybe Chalice isn't what you're targeting, but it does hit a Walking Ballista.
That is true.
So why
or
we
an Arcbound Ravager.
Yeah. That's why we can be a little bit more optimistic about this card, other than the Elder spell.
Yeah, that's for sure. So. We do get Sorin's Thirst as well, which was a card that saw play before. So
yeah,
keep it on your periphery. It also has one of the best flavor texts in the entire set, which is "I see you're out of the wall."
Correct. And obviously we still have the one from Ixalan or Rivals of Ixalan or whatever when it came out.
Moment of Craving.
Moment of Craving, which is still probably better.
It's probably better.
It's easier to cast.
It also gives minuses, but once that's gone, this will be there.
Yeah, this will be the replacement effect. But yeah, shout out to Unlikely Aid with probably one of the better story moments on it, because who doesn't like to ride the Rakdos?
I can show you actually just this world, this one
world, this one world,
and only a small part of it before you have to get off of my back. Sorry. What do you think of black?
I mean, it gets one of the best cards in the format. So
it does, but outside of that,
I mean, outside of that, I'm not too impressed, but
Again, Liliana and Liliana's Triumph are both really, really important.
yeah, they're top tier. I think Massacre Girl is also up there, to be perfectly honest.
It's very powerful. The raw power is there. So, and the same with true with Finale of Eternity. I think there's a lot of mid-range cards though.
Yeah, I like black because there's a handful of pauper cards that
there you go.
we're gonna go in my cube. So,
we're gonna move on to red now.
And with red, we're starting off with Bolt Bend. Bend it like
Bolt?
Beckham.
No, it's definitely not Beckham there. Is Beckham a Planeswalker?
Maybe. I don't know.
You can't be that good at soccer and also get a Planeswalker Spark. That's not fair.
He's probably not. No, this card is is picturing, Rouse Eric on
His
it.
wife's
so.
a Spice Girl, for God's sake.
It's true.
Sorry, for Kevnet's sake.
So Bolt Bend is 3 generic red for an instant, and says this spell costs 3 or less to cast if you control a creature with power 4 or greater.
Hey, look, another mechanic.
Yeah, it's weird. It says change the target of target spell or ability with a single target. Lots of targets here. Must be a suburb because there's so many targets.
Boo. Boo this man.
Boo this man.
I think this card is interesting. It's a unique... it's a text box that's seen play whenever it's imprinted. Ricochet Shot is probably the one that we've seen the most common play with, correct?
Yeah. Or is it Ricochet Trap?
Ricochet Trap. Sorry, Ricochet Trap. This seems interesting to me, though, with especially with the advent of the Gruul Warriors deck. That could be, that makes 4/4s pretty consistently, and is on the lookout for things like this. That being able to change the target of removal spells, being able to change the target of counter spells. This also changes the target of Settle the Wreckage.
Oh,
because that says target player.
Oh, well then.
Yeah, how about
I would
that?
like to settle your wreckage.
But none of my creatures are attacking. Don't care.
Doesn't matter. Not a requirement.
Mine still are. Now, granted, we already have our Gruul Spellbreaker, which is part of that effect, and it's probably the 4/4 we're going to have in play
most of the time.
But again, being able to turn a removal spell away from a critical creature and putting on something weaker, or I said eating a counter spell, just like, hey, target this now, counter this. That's pretty good, and I think we've seen cards like Misdirection show us how powerful that can be. So. Is it a main deck card? No, probably not. But it's a sideboard card for decks that can present 4/4s pretty consistently. Don't be surprised when your Absorb eats this and their spell resolves.
Yeah. It's also important that this could bleed into Modern potentially in decks that are like Death Shadow decks that don't want to play blue.
Yeah.
And are playing red, which most of them are playing red.
Yeah.
So it is not as good as Separate Denial. Don't let any. But again, this is for something. If you want something tricky and aren't playing blue,
yeah, I do think like Death Shadow Zoo could play this. It does work pretty interesting with like discard spells.
Yeah.
So, you're gonna target yourself with that. But yeah, go ahead. Thoughts, seize yourself.
pick your own brain.
But I don't want to discard a card. Well, better pick one.
You don't get a choice.
So, but yeah, I think it has the ability to be a sweet card. Hey. You got all the cool cards at the beginning, but look how this lined up.
Yeah, you get your
my
bae.
bae. She came to me. Chandra Fire Artisan is our next card. 2 generic red for a legendary Planeswalker Chandra. It starts with 4 loyalty, has a static ability and 2 activated abilities. It says whenever 1 or more loyalty counters are removed from Chandra Fire Artisan, she deals that much damage to target opponent or Planeswalker. Her +1, exile the top card of your library. You may play it this turn. -7, exile the top 7 cards of your library. You may play them this turn. So when I first saw this, I went, okay, 4 mana is the right spot. Goes to 5 loyalty is pretty good, and that tick up is sweet because my favorite Chandra is Chandra Pyromaster, and that's what she did. She did this. So that was great, but I wasn't really sure. Like, okay, most of these Planeswalkers didn't have an ultimate, right? So she kind of reads like an ultimate. It's definitely attainable, and I was like, I don't know about this. I shuffled this card up last week in a Krenko Brawl deck that I proxied, and found out very quickly that this card is really, really gross. If you were playing anything that's aggressively slanted, and they have to get rid of this card. Yeah. In the past, when they got rid of Chandra just kind of died. Here, Chandra hits hard, and if they have to attack it, right? I mean, if it loses 5 loyalty counters, you just take 5. And I was not when evaluating this card, I just without seeing it in play, I wasn't really visualizing this, and then I realized that okay, so it comes into play. You tick up a couple turns. When you -7, it deals 7 damage.
Yeah.
And it just again, it wasn't clicking for me in my head until I saw it in play, and all of a sudden it was like, oh, this is. I mean, I think this card's incredibly good.
I agree, wholeheartedly. I think like this is, we had a lot of like 4-mana planeswalkers that gave you like card advantage. Like you had Karn, you had Domri. When you're looking at some of like these Gruul sort of decks, or even some bigger red decks that were existing in the format. The big red deck that was like treasure mapping people and then like going up and playing big cards, like this is what they want. This card's absurd. It's good with it. It's obviously good with like treasure map, being able to like scry and then like tick up or what have you.
Well, we saw it with Experimental Frenzy.
Yeah, it's absurd there.
I had both of those in play, and like Morgan and I were both just like, oh,
that's a good interaction. I mean, both 4 mana, but this is this is a card that does a lot. The downside, Experimental Frenzy does give you that explosive ability, but I think like overall, like this card probably does a lot more than of what you want in like those red decks.
So dumb question here. I assume when it dies, it doesn't lose loyalty counters. It just,
if it were like to be destroyed or exiled,
okay,
probably not, because you're not dealing damage.
Yeah, I assume
dealt
that's
damage
true,
is translated in like a
removal.
removal.
Right?
Yeah.
But that being said, I could see a world where this begins to replace Experimental Frenzy in the red decks, because Frenzy is definitely the card that's trying to get you over the hump when you are running out of cards at the end of some of these decks. This does that for you too, but also like if you're playing Frenzy when your opponent's at a lower life total and you're trying to just finish them off, Chandra does that too, unless of course it's like Vraska's Contempt. So that's where we get some issues. So.
Obviously, they are different cards,
but it also doesn't like get hit by Mortify, which Frenzy does. I think like the format will dictate that, but I think Chandra's going to see a lot of play. Even the Gruul Warriors deck that I've been playing has played.
Gruul Warriors 100% would want Chandra.
They probably want little Domri too, which we'll talk about. Yeah. But I've already been playing like 4 Domri, and a lot of them are playing Karn Liberated not Karn Liberated. Gosh, I wish. Karn Sign of Urza. Yeah. I think this immediately replaces that.
100%. You're not doing anything with Karn's like tokens.
You're just using it to draw cards.
Correct.
This is what you want to do with it.
Right, yeah. I want to have something that if you are going to take like the opportunity to attack it, like you are going to further my game plan.
Yeah, 100%. Like especially if you have to attack it, because they have to tap their creature, attack you, take damage, and let you attack them. Like that is what that deck wants to do. So this card has me really excited. After getting to play with it a little bit, I was like, all right, I'm sold. Yeah, this Chandra's awesome.
This is this is a card that if they don't have a way to like kill it with a spell, that they're probably just going to let exist.
And then what? -7?
It kills them.
I love it.
It's perfect.
It makes me very happy. So we can quickly talk about her Triumph, though. I put it on here. I don't know how you felt about it.
It's weak.
It is.
It does target planeswalkers, which is good, but it targets creatures or planeswalkers. You can't have an instant speed spell that is 2 mana and can potentially deal 5 damage to a player, and I understand that. I get that. I understand. But similar to how...
It can't deal 5 damage to a player.
No, I know. I understand that. That's why it can't.
I see. Okay, I'm sorry.
I would like if this card was just like incinerate.
I misunderstood what you said. My bad.
You can't have that. That's why this is targeted as a creature or a planeswalker. It is potentially powerful. Again, when you're talking about 5 damage, then you're almost saying like this could potentially kill a planeswalker wholesale,
right?
Just like the black spell we just talked about, and being able to deal 5 damage to a creature, that's pretty impactful. And we just talked about how the Chandra in this set can stay around, so you potentially have a Chandra that sticks around to be able to get this benefit. It has a lot of things going for it. I anytime I just see this effect, I'm not sure like where it goes. You know what I mean? Like we already have Lava Coil, and Lava Coil I feel like is most of the time better than this card.
Yeah, I agree with that. I agree with that a lot. Yeah, that 5 damage is a sweet spot. And when you look at, but I think when you look at the format, like Chandra's Defeat always did 5 to red things, and it was so critical to kill. And when I think about this format, the things I want to hit, 4 is going to be pretty important. So
correct.
So yeah, I agree. It's probably not good enough.
I don't know. That card is like a really hard card to make it be both always good and not busted.
You're not wrong.
I don't think like you could make it 4 damage because it would be busted.
It being busted would make me feel good, but
as frequently, that is. But so that I think that card just is tough. Like it was just always going to be tough to make. And I don't know. Maybe we are wrong about that, but it feels like it's still like a lightning strike, lava coil sort of setup for our 2 mana things. Potentially, Todd Anderson was playing Teamer decks and he was playing Jaya's Greeting because of Scry. Like, and that's probably just worthwhile, just in those kind of decks.
We call that the old Dominarian hello.
Hit you for 3 and look in Scry. So the next card is it mine?
I'll give it to you.
Okay, is Dreadhorde Arcanist. It's a 1 and a red for a 1/3 zombie wizard. It has trample. It says whenever Dreadhorde Arcanist attacks, you may cast target instant or sorcery card with converted mana cost less than or equal to Dreadhorde Arcanist's power from your graveyard without paying its mana cost. If this card would be put into your graveyard, exile it instead. So it's a Smash Caster Mage.
I like that.
But this card has been kind of absurd in standard from like some preliminary testing I've seen. Like even in the preview event today, some of the Star City Games Versus series live that they do on a weekly basis, and it's good with the heroic deck, the quote unquote heroic deck.
Yeah, we started with Defiant Strike as our first card in this review, and this is one of the cards we sort of pictured going with. Like it pumps it, which is a card that has trample.
Yep.
It cantrips. It gets cast again for free.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty good.
Yes, it's good with a whole slew of things. It's good with shock. It's good with another card
it's on this list
that we're going to be talking about. It does a lot of positive things. It potentially could do some stuff in Modern or Legacy.
Death Shadow Zoo is a deck I've played a bunch, and it's gotten a little bit of talk for that because the card has trample, so playing it with some of your pump spells already makes sense.
Hilariously, again, what always makes me laugh is you can become immense it and then cast become immense again on it.
Yeah, you can. It's crazy, and like you can also like turn 1 Thoughtseize, turn 2 this. If you get to attack, you cast Thoughtseize again. Like that shouldn't be overstated. And also, as far as like it's a 1/3, but it works really, really, really well with mutagenic growth.
Yeah.
Because like they're like, oh, well, I go to attack. They're like, all right, well, I'll kill it. You're like, well, I'll pump up mutagenic growth. Then I'll attack, and I'll cast mutagenic growth.
And to the people that are like, oh, well, dies to removal. Yeah, but this depending on those board state, it has to, or you're toast.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, yes, it dies to removal, but I think it is pressing enough and gets enough value that you're right. It does have to. So, when I compare it to when I look at that deck and I look at the creatures, like Wild Nikotl has always been the creature that's like, you're pretty average. 1 mana versus 2 is a big deal, but I'm into at least try it.
Yeah, give it a shot. Are we doing a Finale of Promise?
Yeah, the next one is Finale of Promise. X red for a sorcery. You may cast up to 1 target instant card and or up to 1 target sorcery card from your graveyard, each with converted mana cost X or less without paying their mana cost. If a card cast this way would be put into your graveyard this turn, exile it instead. If X is 10 or more, copy each of those spells twice. You may choose new targets for the copies. This is interesting. So good.
I was going to say this finale doesn't exile itself, which a few of them do, right? I think the blue one does.
Yeah, the blue one does, because you could draw it again if you shuffled it in.
Yeah.
I think that might be the only one.
I think the green one does. Or maybe the green one just doesn't. Maybe I'm just getting confused like Green Sun Zenith, because like Green Sun it doesn't shuffle back in.
Yeah, we'll look. I don't know. But like so for 3 mana you can target 2 1-mana cards.
Season course cards with each with a converted mana cost
X or less.
2. So you could target for like red X. Is that when red 1? Wouldn't that be 2 instant sorceries with
CMC 1?
1 or less.
Yeah. So like for 3 mana you could cast shock and
crash through or something.
Yeah,
like
sure. The scale there is pretty interesting.
Most of the time, I think 4 mana is like the sweet spot.
Right. But some people are really high on this card. I don't know where I'm quite at on it. Like, the potential is certainly there, but the mana savings aren't huge until you start getting up into that sweet
Sure.
spot.
It is good with Phoenix.
It certainly is. It certainly is.
Because that's 3 spells. You cast this, and you cast the other two.
You cast the other two.
There you go. We did it.
And if you build your deck that way, then sure, that makes a ton of sense. But this is also just a card that has to have things in the graveyard for it to do anything. And those things, the more efficient this card is, the less that those things do. Now, the one place, though, where you start getting pretty spicy with it are cards that cost 0 mana. Because what if the sorcery that I targeted was Ancestral Visions, or Living End, or Restore Balance?
So, again, when things have 0 CMC, and then we can cast them for their converted mana cost without paying it, it just gets busted.
Yeah, it really does. So that is where I see it being the most abusable, but I think it'll see play in Standard for sure. I want to see what the combination of cards we're trying to... is it just valuing in blue-red? Yeah, maybe it is. Then how many of these can you play? Sure. But the combo potential is pretty off the charts when you start getting into older formats.
Yes. Yes, it is.
So I promise you that.
All right. So,
what finale I promised? You didn't laugh.
Oh, I'm sorry. Ha ha ha.
He'll edit in a good laugh.
You got the Boar God, right? That's who's next.
I am the Boar God. Oh, sorry. I do want a quick shout out to Grim Initiate. Red for a 1/1 zombie warrior with first strike, and when it dies, amass 1. If there's a Mardu Aristocrats deck,
you might want to play that.
You might want to play the 2-for-1. So
and that's a card that's going into Pauper Cube as well.
Nice. Sorry, go ahead. But yeah, I passed here so you could get.
Elrog, the Raised Boar. 3 generic red for 6/6. Legendary god, legendary creature, Boar God. Trample. Says when Elrog the Raised Boar attacks, you may put a creature card from your hand onto the battlefield, tapped and attacking. Return that creature to your hand at the beginning of the next end step, and then it also has the Santa Claus on it as well. So this card has a few other creature cards that it works well with, to say the least, and a few other things that you could really do to kind of get it going. It works well with its forerunners. It turns out it works well with the last god on our list, Ronus.
It does do well with that, yes.
So there are definitely a few things you can do with it. It works well with Emrakul the Aeonstorn, I guess. You don't get the Annihilator trigger, but you still are attacking with a flying 15/15.
Yeah, you just get to attack for 21, so
that's fine.
Blackjack. I think in Standard, 5 mana 6/6 with Trample is a pretty good body.
Yeah.
But 4 mana 6/6s aren't seeing a ton of play right now, so it just depends.
No.
There are a number of ways to flash this card in, though. We just talked about Vivian, Champion of the Wilds comes to mind. The Emergence Zone, Teferi, I guess, but that's a weird Jeskai deck. Right, because Teferi will let you.
I think it's sorcery.
Oh, okay, never mind.
It's not a creature.
Can't. So Emergence Zone, but in Vivian. But
yeah,
if you could set up the deck up to flash this in and get yourself an extra chance at it, then that's pretty good. There's also some other ways to give it haste. We didn't put Samut on this list of Planeswalkers to talk about, but maybe you just want that static ability. My creatures have haste. The 4 mana Domri giving Riot to a creature. Maybe you're just going to give it haste that way. So Rhythm of the Wild can give it haste. So I think there's a lot of ways.
This board knows how to dance.
Yeah, so I think the ways that, the key to this card is going to be either flashing it in or giving it haste in some way, shape, or form.
100%.
And if you can accomplish that, you really probably don't need the big giant thing to flash in with it. It's probably good enough with just an extra creature coming in. So pretty excited. I think. I think it could be. Good
I think it's appropriate. People want to compare it to sneak attacking, and sure. I'll give it to him a little bit.
Yeah, that's fair.
A little bit.
As we scroll through here, because Krenko's the next card I get to talk about, but I do want to mention Jaya, Venerated Fire Mage, only because if you did not see the announcement, I'm sure we'll talk about it in a regular episode, but about the Japanese Planeswalkers.
Yes.
The Japanese Jaya is one of the sweet ones. Go take a look. There's some alternate art Planeswalkers that Japanese artists draw art for Planeswalkers.
Yeah, and they're going to be in Japanese packs of war.
Yeah, they 50% of the time they will replace that slot, but the Jaya is one of the ones that really benefited, I think, from the redo. Some of that art is awesome.
I think a lot of it's actually really cool. I mean, they got some really prolific artists.
They really did.
If you're a fan of Final Fantasy, they did get Yoshitaka Amano, and he has done a lot of the initial character drawings for a lot of the Final Fantasies, especially the ones that you probably may have played when you're growing up. Your Final Fantasies, 5, 6, 7, 8. 10, he did 10 as well. I did some work on that, so definitely a lot of good Japanese artists that they got to really recruit and produce those cards.
I really want. I don't like playing with like non-English cards often in standard decks because like I like having something clear that. But man, sometimes it's just too sweet. And
yeah,
those are just too sweet.
Yeah.
Next up, though, is Krenko Tin Street Kingpin. 2 generic and a red for a 1/2 legendary creature Goblin. Whenever Krenko Tin Street Kingpin attacks, put a +1/+1 counter on it, then create a number of 1/1 red Goblin creature tokens equal to Krenko's power. Now, I think when you look at this card, you're like, all right, okay, 3 mana for a 1/2. However, there's another card that saw a fair amount of play, especially towards the end of its life, fairly recently in Standard, that is almost the exact same thing as this card. And it was Hanwar Bastion. Is that what it was? The 2/3, whenever it attacked, it made 2 human tokens. It's a 2/3 for 3. This attacks as a 2/3 for 3, and makes tokens when it does so. So at its floor, this is a playable card based on historic information. When you consider it with the goblins that are in Standard, and some of just the red cards, but what you can do with this card in Standard, I think it does get interesting.
I think it does.
I don't know if Krenko means there's a goblin deck. We've been dancing around a goblin deck for a while now, but having access to something like Skirk Prospector, which means you can cast this on turn 2, or you can use those tokens for more mana, is pretty interesting. And if you can find ways to pump Krenko, or give those things haste, then to borrow Morgan's phrase I'm using, you got yourself a stew going. And red white heroic is a deck that we have seen have the beginnings here, with Feather, with Dreadhorde Arcanist, with 10th Street Legionnaire we're going to talk about. You start pumping this, you get a big guy that attacks, you end up with 5 or 6 tokens. That's a board state that's tough to come back from. And we have Legion Warboss already that's sort of that army in a can. This is also an army in a can that keeps growing. So it's a 1 card, 3 mana threat that can take over the game by itself. So
yeah,
I don't think we can ignore this card. It's sad because it may just do nothing.
It might. I mean, when we talk about all those things, you have this 3 mana army in a can. All I hear is like Legion Warboss, and we had Legion Warboss showing up as well. I think this card is definitely more. This card is more explosive, right?
Yes.
This card gets out of hand quicker.
Its first attack has a much higher chance of being devastating than Legion Warboss does.
Yes.
And I think like when you think about that, because Legion Warboss attacks on turn 1 is 1, turn 2 is 4, turn 3 is 7, right? So this is nothing. Turn 1, turn 2 is 2, turn 3 is 5, turn 4 is 7, 8, 9. So it does start to, in a longer turn format, it does get there. So I'd have to actually time it out to see if it gets to lethal faster. But again, it may not do anything, but I think it's pretty exciting. This is the first Brawl deck that I latched onto for War of the Spark. And I got to tell you, now granted, you recast it as a Brawl commander, but with some of the cards, and again, there's still one to come in this category that we're going to talk about. But even like Maximize Velocity being in the format, it's pretty great. And if you go back and look at when we first got some of these goblins, there were some combo goblins lists that were floating around that were Skirk Prospector and Runaway Steamkin, Experimental Frenzy, and Goblin Dark Dweller Oracle or something like that. The other one. This really leads to more of that because it makes more goblins to do that and fits right into the chain. So I hope Krenko does something. I know he's a beloved character. I know he was the main the main villain in the D&D campaign, correct?
Yes.
He was like the first campaign you did, he was the villain for. So he's a pretty beloved character, I know, and I'm excited for it. So it may not do anything, but I hope it does.
At the very least, it'll be your Brawl commander for a long time.
Absolutely. So looking for a Goblin Trash Master, anybody, by the way, just saying. If you got trades, I need trash.
Next up, we have Neheb, Dreadhorde Champion. So two
Oh,
generic.
did you miss Mizium Tank? Did I put? Not
Oh,
put it
sorry,
on?
Mizium Tank. Sorry,
Yeah.
I'm just looking ahead. Mizium Tank is next. Actually, it's one generic red for a 3/2 artifact vehicle. Has trample. It says whenever you cast a non-creature spell, Mizium Tank becomes an artifact creature and gets +1/+1 until end of turn, and has a crew of 1. So this card's pretty efficient, and you don't need creatures to crew it. That is the important part, and I think that's what bridges it into like potential playability down the road.
I agree.
Maybe not initially, but I definitely think like it's being able to animate itself is where you want to be, and it having a pseudo like prowess sort of feel to it.
I think like the deck where I want to see it slotted immediately is something that's running Arclight Phoenix. It is awkward because the 3-mana Saheeli that we'll talk about when we get to multicolored fights this for space, I think, and the Saheeli's probably better. But this and the Saheeli both dodge. You generally dodge sorcery speed removal. This has a little bit of an awkward clause where if you do cast any spells on your opponent's turn, it becomes a creature.
Yeah,
so
it's not a May.
So if you negate something, then they could get you on a Wrath or something like that. But like, think about if this is your turn 3, and then turn 4 you're going to try bringing back Phoenixes, and you cast 3-4 spells to do that. Well, not only the Phoenix is coming back to attack, but now you've got a 6 or 7 power tank that's also coming through,
right?
Which I think is pretty great. It dying to just regular removal spells is awkward because it's not as recursive as the Phoenix is, and maybe it's not as good as just a Drake on 4 or again Saheeli, which is a more difficult permanent to interact with. But I want to see the world where this is the deck, or this is the kind of card that can get in. I also think that, like, yes, you don't have to crew it, but I also sort of love the idea of getting to crew this and attacking, and then just like staring at your opponent with cards in hand. Like, would you like to block? Because I'm just going to cast Opt, you know what I mean, and blow you out. And I think that is a cool pressure that this card sort of can present. So I like what this card is doing, and like if this is what they're going to do with vehicle space, like the submarine sucks, but
yes,
this sounds sweet. This is cool to me.
Yes, and you know they've really have. This has been a common sort of thing with these sort of artifacts that have beneficial abilities. So I mean that like equipment and these where they Maro has been on the record of being like we want to print more powerful artifacts that are like this, that are vehicles, that are equipment, but we need to put them into colors now, so that we can not make them ever universal. Basically.
I think it's some of the decks that got to run Smuggler's Copter that should not have had access to a 2-mana 3/3 flyer, and heck, where that card still sees the most amount of play is like Fish in like older formats. Like Mono Blue shouldn't have 3/3 flyers.
No.
So yeah, I agree with that. And like if this is the design space that like making the vehicle colored like lets you tap into, then I'm more excited for vehicles in the future than I was the last time.
Yeah.
So. Yeah, that was pretty cool. Do we want to talk about Neheb? I know I put him on here. I keep going back and forth. I don't know.
I would say look at him. Okay. I mean, I would say like I don't want to read his card text. I would say if he is something I wouldn't be surprised. But
a 5/4 with trample for 4. It is crazy when we look at like the creatures we've talked about already in the set that. Man, I get why people like playing old school Magic. I really do. Because when you play a 5/5 for 4, man, it should mean something. Yeah. You know what I mean? Jism Jin used to mean something.
So I will say that it is a warrior, which is important.
Oh, it's a warrior.
It's a warrior. So we already have a Gruul Warriors deck. They like to have tramplers. You know, there's something to it for sure. I don't know. I just don't know. Maybe, but I'm hesitant to say like it's a lock for anything, just because it amongst like the power level that we've gotten from a bunch of different cards, I'm not sure if it kind of cracks that way in.
No, I think
it's a borderline.
I think that's the big deal there. When you assess 4-drops in red colors, like, is this better than Rekindling Phoenix? No, it's not. Is this better than Chandra Fire Artisan?
I don't think so.
I don't think so either. Is this better than 4-mana Domri?
Maybe.
Okay, maybe. Is it
there
better
we
than
go.
Experimental Frenzy?
No.
So I that's the problem with it. It's a cool effect. You're getting to discard, wheel your hand, and draw that many cards, and getting red mana to cast those. That's certainly powerful. But if you already got to hit your opponent with your 4-mana 5/4, then I think you are winning. So yeah, that's fine. We could talk about Raging Crunch.
The crunch.
So, oh man, can I talk about Samus Spirit?
Yeah,
I'm super excited. This is the card I keep alluding to. Samet Sprint, 1 red, instant. Target creature goes +2/+1 and gains haste another turn, scry 1. I know what you're thinking. You're like, that's the one? That's the one you're thinking of? But look at all the cards we have talked about so far that need an enabler. +2/+1, scry 1, and haste. You know, that you're essentially trading 1 point of power for haste when you think of Titan Strength, which was the standard in the other heroic decks. I got to tell you, that's just fine. And if you're getting this card back with like a Feather, which we're going to talk about, or recasting with Dreadhorde Arcanist, right? Like, this is a sweet bump. And this is the card I want paired with Krenko all day. Because, like, oh, I'll cast Krenko, then I'll target it with this and attack. I get 4 goblins.
Yeah.
Like, that's disgusting. And you know, it can be done on, you know, turn 3 if you have, you know, if you, depending on what your start is.
Yeah.
So I think this is a sweet card for the heroic decks, and I think it's a sweet card for just red decks. We have seen so many versions of this card see play. We had Hammerhand, saw a ton of play.
Hammerhand was nice because it also stopped the blocker.
No, that's true. But I think like when you look at those effects, though, just for a mana getting haste on something, it turns board states around at times.
Yeah.
So deceptively powerful 1 mana card that fits really, really well with this heroic sub theme we have.
For sure.
So there you go, Samet. You finally got a good card.
We're proud of you.
Actually, her creature card is obscene. It still sees modern play.
Yeah,
so like that's
good.
fine. But
next up we have Sarkhan the Masterless, which is 3 generic red for a legendary planeswalker, Sarkhan. He has a static ability and then 2 abilities after that. So the static ability is whenever a creature attacks you or a planeswalker you control, each dragon you control deals 1 damage to that creature. So definitely needs a little bit of support to be relevant, but could be potentially, you know, powerful depending on how many Daggerons you got. And he has a +1. It says until end of turn, each planeswalker you control becomes a 4/4 red dragon creature and gains flying. And then -3, create a red dragon creature token with flying. So immediately, you know, makes a dragon, enables the actual static ability.
Caltrops.
Yeah, which is fine. Perfect. Theoretically, like, you know, the +1 is actually pretty powerful as well. Now important to note, Sarkhan won't be able to attack. He does not gain haste. He just gains flying and becomes a 4/4. But if you have other planeswalkers, you know, if you have a 3 mana Domri or what have you, you know, if you're playing a Karn or something like that, or Chandra, you know, you now suddenly have a force of planeswalker dragons.
Karn's like, what'd you do to me? I turned you into a dragon? All right, this is cool.
I like this.
Yeah, it's a difficult card to assess. I think like getting to tick down and just make a dragon to start, you know, turns off X1 attackers, which is just, you know, deceptively powerful. And like I said, it doesn't take much to have like maybe 1 more dragon to play when you do this.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely are. We're not obviously in, you know, Khans block where we just had a nexus of dragons, but
we still have some good dragons.
You still have Skargan. You still have
Varric's Bladewing.
Yeah, Varric's Bladewing was the one I'm thinking of because it's 4 mana.
Right. I think if this card's going to be powerful, though, it's that first ability where you can maybe like chain a couple of planeswalkers into this, and then all of a sudden, like, this is just kind of a one shot to get people. Now, the other thing that has to be talked about here, not just the haste with the +1, but also they just become 4/4s. Correct. All of them do. You can't decide some of them do. Sarkhan says, "You're dragons now," and they're like, "Okay, I'm dragons now," and you can mortify them. You can kill them with regular creature spells. You still can't cast down them. So that's nice.
So they're still legendary.
But it's pretty important to note that you can just destroy them with regular creature removal spells, which is awkward.
They are wreckage that can be settled.
That is also true. So, but I think that if you want to build a deck around this card, it's pretty cool, and it probably starts with some copies of this Sarkhan and some copies of the other Sarkhan. But cool design.
Yeah.
It
feels very Sarkhan-y.
It does. I don't see it doing much.
Probably not. But again, I say it feels very Sarkhan-y. All you have to do is just slap dragon 5 times on there, and they're like, "Yeah, that's Sarkhan." We met the dragon quota. We got it.
Man, I do enjoy Sarkhan's catharsis right after that with his dragon hands. He's like,
even
hands. My hands are dragons.
I'm so one note.
Karn would not like that one. He's like, "You're a dragon now," and he's like, "No, my hands are. Can I please have my fingers back? I need those." Oh, man.
I'm trying to eat.
And the last one for red, surprised even me too.
It's Tybalt,
Yeah.
Rockish Instigator, which is
You are doing it again.
I thought you read Sarkin.
I did not.
Okay, sorry.
You monster.
You just talked about Sarkin a lot. My bad.
Okay, every time you talk about a card for more than 10 seconds, you are not allowed to read the next card. That's my new rule. Tybalt Rakish Instigator is 2 generic and a red for a legendary Planeswalker Tybalt. Static ability says your opponents can't gain life. It has a -2, create a 1/1 red devil creature token with when this creature dies, it deals 1 damage to any target, and it has 5 loyalty. So it ticks down and makes was that a Footlight?
A Footlight Fiend.
Yeah, Footlight Fiend. I'm putting this card down here because of its static ability, just like all the uncommons. Your opponents can't gain life is a pretty powerful static ability for very specific red decks. And I could see this being a sideboard card that, especially against something like Esper, where you can turn off the life gain, and ticking down and making a 1/1 that when it dies deals damage is not irrelevant, because essentially Tybalt can sit at 1 loyalty, and it's the same as 5 loyalty against control decks. So
yeah.
But being able to get this under like absorbs, and then maybe turning off all of the absorbs as far as life gain goes, can change the dynamic of that. Turning off Moment of Cravings, turning off Revitalize, which is a card on Magic Arena has seen a huge resurgence as I've been playing the last week or so. Just turning those cards off is pretty important. And then if they have to spend a turn dealing with Tybalt to get that away, then you're fine as well. So I don't think I'll see a lot of play, and it's definitely a sideboard card to me. Maybe there's an Aristocrats deck that wants the repeatable Footlight Fiend as well.
You only get a couple of them,
Yeah.
so I don't think it's worth it. But yes, we have a card that's currently banned that has that line of text on it.
That is very true.
So it's banned, probably not for that line of text necessarily, probably for the other parts of what it does. But I definitely think
attacking for 3 is a sin. So
yeah, and having to be blocked by 2 creatures for sure. But people. That effect tricks a lot of people into thinking that it's playable, though. So I'd say be wary. It might be something that gets tried out and is not effective, but you never know.
Yeah, it's a text box to remember.
Yeah,
going forward. So that's red.
Yeah, I like red. I got a few good things. I mean that Chandra is really like the standout.
Yeah, I agree with that as well.
I think to be honest, I think a lot of the rare planeswalkers, like, even though they are clearly less powerful than their mythic rare counterparts, are still interesting, and fit into like not even just niche slots, but are just like main deckable and not embarrassing.
No, I agree with that a lot. We could have a whole different conversation on how reassessing our earlier conversation about like the design space for planeswalkers, and I think that like the uncommons for the most part still bother me because a lot of them feel like a waste. But I think what they did with the rare slots, or essentially taking away the ultimate from a planeswalker, like from with the rare planeswalkers, really changes the way they feel, and I think it's for the better. Like I think it really is. Like I think taking away because I think players in general have a hard time not like looking they don't look straight at the alt, look at everything else. But but I think like when you take that away and you're like saying like this planeswalker works in this fashion, it is interesting for sure. So I will give them kudos on the rares. I agree with that as well. Ready for green?
Ready for green. All right. The first green card that we have. And I'm paying
set your alarm.
Yeah, it's the awakening of Vitu-Ghazi. That's when you
must sleep for 10,000 years, sleepyhead.
Yeah, you got to set up your wake up call in the morning so the front desk wakes you up after 10,000 years. Goes, hey, there's an interplanar threat that's happening on your being, and it's like, oh crap, well I better get up then. I'm late. I think. Awakening of Vitu-Ghazi, which is 3 generic green for an instant. It says put 9/1/1 counters on target land you control. It becomes a legendary 0/0 elemental creature with haste named Vitu-Ghazi.
Hey, look, land. Another mechanic came back.
Yeah. Awakening. But this is an instant speed 9/9.
Yeah, that's I think when you look at this card, like I think your first thought is going to be like, okay, yeah, it's green that makes a big derpy thing, but it's an instant like it's a flash 9/9. Now, granted, if you wanted to block and like really blow people out, it's cost 6, right? Because you want an untapped land. But oh boy, that's still huge.
Yeah.
Also, not that I think this will ever happen, but in Modern, you put 9 counters on an Inkmoth Nexus, it now hits for 10.
It's a Blightsteel Colossus that flies.
1 infect, yeah, no blocks. All right. Awakening of Vidugazi.
Oh boy.
So 5 mana is a lot for that to work. And
100%.
I don't know what this does really in standard, but I think when you read that instant speed, make a 9/9, that demands respect. And in a format where you're gonna have a lot of powerful planeswalkers hanging out, I think for green to have access to like, hey, end of turn, make a 9/9 that's gonna have a chance to go out one of these planeswalkers is pretty important too. So,
Yeah.
It may not see any play. I don't know, but it's cool.
It is important that it is immune to some common sort of removal effects
That's
as well.
super true.
It being a land, a lot of our things say non-land permanent.
Yeah, like we mentioned our Ixalan's binding and things
Yep.
like that. These are non-land. Yeah, that's a good call.
And Teferi can't minus it.
Oh shoot, that's real good too.
Yeah.
Okay, I like this. I like where we're at.
So just keep that in mind. All and it's legendary. Can't get
Oh,
cast
God,
down.
get cast down. All right, I'm even more in. This is good. I like that.
Yeah, it's kind of tricky.
So all right, yeah, this card is fairly solid. I have no idea where it goes, but it's pretty solid.
At your face, more than likely.
Oh, nice.
You did say you wanted maybe potentially bigger Bond of Flourishing.
Yeah, I'll at least talk about it. So Bond of Flourishing is 1 generic and a green for a sorcery. Look at the top 3 cards of your library. You may reveal a permanent card from among them and put it into your hand and put the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. Sorry, I got the hiccups. You gain 3 life. So this is the Simic and the Selesnya come together. We already have a card like this that has seen a fair amount of play, which is Adventurous Impulse.
Yeah.
And of course, the last time we had a card like this that was like closer to a permanent was like Oath of Nissa. 2 mana is a huge increase versus the other ones.
Yeah.
But
2 mana, not instant speed either.
2 mana, not instant. Well, I mean, Adventurous Impulse is also a sorcery.
Yeah.
Oath of Nissa is also a sorcery. So.
But I'm thinking we talked about Revitalize,
Sure, and that's for a green card. I wouldn't expect.
Yeah.
it. Granted, I guess the closest one that's seeing a lot of play now is like Growth Spiral, which is an instant.
Yeah,
so there's
that's
that.
true.
But I think for decks that are maybe Planeswalker heavy, looking for different color mana, this is a fine 2-drop, and I could see even Nexus decks maybe wanting this. Spiral can increase their mana going forward, but that gain 3 life is really relevant for decks that are sort of maybe struggling against aggressive creature decks. So
Yeah.
I don't know where this sits at 2 mana. It could be too expensive, but getting any permanent you want and gaining 3 life means that your floor is probably I found a mana and I gained it did that, and that's fine. So yeah, go ahead. So go ahead. You can take the Sage then.
The Evolution Sage.
Yeah.
Evolution Sage is 2 generic and a green for a creature, Elf Druid. It's a 3/2. It says whenever a land enters the battlefield,
Hey, look,
under, your
another
control,
mechanic.
under your control, proliferate. Get your landfall out of my set, wizards. We see you. This is probably better than any landfall creature we got when landfall came back.
Oh my gosh, they put all these other landfall creatures in like Return to Zendikar block, and this is the best one by far.
I think this card's first of all potentially close to first pickable in limited.
Oh, yeah, if you're especially if you are going Planeswalker heavy,
Yeah,
it's real gross.
And it could have some pretty interesting implications in standard.
I mean, again,
There's a ton of stuff that gets +1/+1 counters. Let's make that clear. Your Explorer creatures get +1/+1 counters. A lot of your Merfolk get +1/+1 counters. A lot of your Planeswalkers have counters on them.
weird. A card that you already mentioned comes to mind, Song of Freyalise.
Yeah.
works well with this card. There's an uncommon in green white in this set that's put a counter on each creature you control. So you're like, I'll put a counter on each creature I control, and I'll play a land. for the turn.
Yeah.
I just think this one, even compared to the blue one, you don't have to do any work.
No.
You're just playing a 3/2 for 3, which is not that far behind where you want to be, and then every land becomes valuable. So if this card's good enough, then yeah, okay, I played a 3 mana 3/2, but your opponent has to do something about it. So I think this card is I think the best proliferate card as far as enabling proliferate that we have in the set for sure. So
I agree with that.
next up is Finale of Devastation. X green for a sorcery. Search your library and or graveyard for a creature card with a converted mana cost X or less and put it onto the battlefield. If you search your library this way, shuffle it. If X is 10 or more, creatures you control get +X and gain haste until end of turn. And there is a dinosaur in this art.
That's a Colossal Dreadmaw sighting for this set. It's definitely a big dino.
Did you see the mocked up Planeswalker for Colossal Dreadmaw? It was horrific to look at. I have to assume like there's a very specific Planeswalker that caused the dinosaur to get here, right? Like Huatli is the one who'd be like,
Definitely.
Which is hilarious then because her terrible Planeswalker card has nothing to do with dinosaurs. I don't know. But anyways, this seems pretty powerful. The searching your library and our graveyard is pretty sweet.
Yeah, like this is a reanimator spell as well as a Court of Calling.
And like it, like the Court of Calling decks, it allows you to still play the singletons because even if they dealt with the singleton, you can get it back. Also, depending on the deck that you're playing this in, this is one of the other finales where the 10x actually may be something that you see happen because if you're playing this in a ramp deck or a deck with a lot of creatures who are also add mana to your mana pool, it's a Craterhoof Behemoth.
Is this able to get 2 creatures?
Search your library and or graveyard for a creature card with mana cost X or less and put on the battlefield.
So is it for sure just one?
Search your library and or graveyard for a creature card.
Okay.
Yeah, you don't get to search for one for your library, one from the graveyard, if that's what you were thinking.
Yeah. I'm just trying to make sure I'm reading it correctly.
But I mean, again, like Craterhoof Behemoth was 8 mana and definitely has been hard cast. This is 12 mana to get the creature and do that. So obviously it's a ton, but in your green ramp deck, it could be done. I think the 2 mana tax on this makes it a little bit tough. When you think of like Court of Calling, you can mitigate the cost of that, and even like Green Sun Zenith, like. If I'm paying 5 mana for this, I'm getting a 3/3 or a 3 CMC creature, so it's got to be combo ready, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. In modern, something that you look at is this is still like 2 mana get a Dryad Arbor, which is pretty good.
Yeah, it's not bad, but I don't know. I think I've seen people be very very high on this card, and specifically for standard. And I don't know that I see it.
Yeah. Okay. I don't know.
I'm just being honest. I don't know if I see it. I think
it's
I'm paying 6 mana to go get what I don't know what 4 mana.
I think 7 is probably where you're going to start
to get gods.
To get gods, to get biogenic ooze, to.
Sure, I guess I'd have to see the format where that's what I want to do because if I'm starting to pay that much mana to search for something, I'm probably just going to cast a Hydrate Crest.
Probably.
If I'm green, whatever. If I need to be mono green when the mana gets worse, then maybe I'll come back to this, and maybe I'm playing this with Nissa's Triumph, which we're going to talk about here in a minute. But otherwise, I don't know. I'm not excited about this card, but I know it's one of the more expensive pre-orders in the set. So
yeah,
which is interesting. Speaking of gods,
yeah. We have our last one, and our not counting the God Pharaoh himself, but this is our last creature. So it's the God Eternal Ronus, and he costs 3 generic green for a legendary creature, zombie god, with Death Touch and a 5/5. Again, this goes of course according to your giant creature with Death Touch makes no sense rule, but whatever. And it says, whenever God Eternal Ronus enters the battlefield, double the power of each other creature you control until end of turn. Those creatures gain vigilance until end of turn. It's just such an absurd line of text still. And then it has the Santa Claus, of course.
Santa Claus. This is really good. It was just said with Ilharg. So.
Yeah, it certainly is. I mean, if there are ways that you're giving this like trample or your team trample or something like that, it feels pretty good. It definitely can do a lot. I don't know where it fits in necessarily.
This is a good finale devastation target.
That's true. It feels kind of like Overrun.
You only have to play 1, I guess, because you can play the 4 finales. Maybe that's what you're doing, but. It does feel like an Overrun. The vigilance is important, but the problem with it is that your board has to be pretty solid.
Right.
That's the problem.
And to be fair, like that feels very similar to Bontu.
Yeah,
right?
that is true.
Now Bontu, you can sacrifice lands, which is kind of a thing.
It is definitely a thing.
So it potentially, this could be something. It's definitely a big effect. It's a powerful effect, but I'm with you. You do kind of need a board for it. And
So I think it's powerful, but I don't know where it goes either. So next up, returning fan favorite, Nissa Who Shakes the World, which is I do believe one of the best like kennings we've had for a name so far. Like who shakes the world. That's strong. That's good. And she did awake Vitu-Ghazi, so
She did just knock on that door.
So this is 3 generic green for a 5 loyalty legendary planeswalker Nissa. Her static ability is whenever you tap a forest for mana, add an additional green to your mana pool. +1, put 3 +1/+1 counters on up to target non-creature land you control. Untap it, it becomes a 0/0 elemental creature with vigilance and haste that's still a land. So hey, get those mechanics. They come back, you know. Mana -8, you get an emblem with lands you control have indestructible. Search your library for any number of forest cards, put them onto the battlefield tapped, then shuffle your library. I gotta be honest, I don't really, as good as the kenning, as good as the name is, I don't really know what I want to do with this Nissa. Now, this Nissa does work well with the Finale Devastation, right? Because that'll ramp you into your X = 10. Pretty much when you untap with her.
Yeah.
But the +1, like making your land a 3/3 that isn't indestructible, that seems more dangerous than good to me. Like I don't really want to be doing that. And the -8 doesn't, like, I get it. I get a ton of mana.
So the most hilarious thing that I think I've determined from this set is there's only one planeswalker that makes an emblem. We have 37 planeswalkers. This is the only one that actually makes an emblem, which is hilarious to me. I think like I think this card is up there in power level still. I think that maybe we don't have a deck for it yet, but it's not bad.
I'd agree it's not bad. A Heartbeat of Spring, a one-sided Heartbeat of Spring is obviously very powerful, but it is forests. Like, it is only forests.
This is why I don't think we have a deck for it.
Right, and I would need to see that. Yes, that means you can play some Shocklands, but you know, if you have to be mono green, and outside of Finale Devastation, I need to know, because the mono green Stompy deck doesn't want to play a 5-mana planeswalker that has an anemic +1.
No,
so it's got to be something that's doing something giant.
Right, and we just don't have that kind of deck in the format.
Yeah, and again, maybe we will because of it. You know, maybe Polaka finally gets a chance to come back and play. I am not excited about this card. I'm just not. I think like its +1 ability, this card's all of its power levels coming from its static ability. Like it is. That is where all of its power levels coming from. And I need you to show me a deck that's going to take good advantage of that static ability, and also won't get neutered without it. Because what happens if you can't land your Nissa? Right, or can't keep it in play. So there
has to be other ramp cards that kind of surround it.
Right, and then like, is that? And I think the other hard thing for Nissa is that a better ramp deck than just a Wilderness Reclamation deck? Probably not.
Wilderness Reclamation's a busted Magic card.
Yeah, of course. So yeah, your uncommon.
This card,
your uncommon is better than your rare. So
not a busted Magic card.
No, it's not. So if you're a Nissa fan and you're excited to see this, I'm glad. The art is sweet. The name is sweet. I think the card is not good enough. At least as a format.
No, not right now. You know what card is good enough? Paradise Druid.
No, I thought I had Nissa's Triumph on there.
Is that good enough?
I don't know. It lets you search up for two basic forest cards, and if you have a Nissa, you can get 3. It's card advantage for the ramp deck. Anyways, Paradise Druid, go ahead.
Paradise Druid. It's 1 generic and a green for a 2/1. It says Paradise Druid has hexproof as long as it is untapped, and it says tap it and add 1 mana of any color.
Yeah, I like this card a lot.
This card's good. This is like a fixed. What was the one from Theros? The tree of the Caryatid?
Oh, Sylvan Caryatid.
Yeah,
that card was probably too good.
Yes. This card feels good. I think this card feels good. We've had a lot of like 2-mana, 2/1 mana creatures that are theoretically like, oh well, this can still be something later on, and this is it's not going to be anything impressive, but you're gonna use it. You're gonna have this because it makes all colors of mana.
Yeah, and, I agree with that.
It's gonna be cool in Cube, Dave's Cube and his Peasant Cube. It makes me jealous because I just look at it and go, man, I wish we got something like that.
Is the FNM Pro for this card too?
Yeah, it looks really good.
It's gonna look sweet too.
Yeah.
So.
But yeah, this is just gonna be a role player.
Yeah, this is a really cool way to do a mana fixer, and I'm very happy with it. So.
Yeah, it lets you cast it and not feel bad.
Right.
Shout out to Plain White Celebration for being able to gain you 16 life.
Yeah. for 7 mana.
For 7 mana, is that good enough?
Nope, it's not.
Have we figured out the amount of mana per amount of life per mana that you can gain to make something playable?
I will say at 7 mana you can also proliferate 4 times.
That's true too.
And I guess depending on your board, that could be hilarious. So I'll ultimate this Planeswalker and this one. And anyways, next card is actually Return to Nature, sounding the death knell of Naturalize.
Yeah, God.
This is a green and generic for an instant. Choose one, destroy target artifact, destroy target enchantment, or exile target card from a graveyard. So
yes, please.
So it does the 2 things that Naturalize does, and then another thing.
another like fairly relevant thing.
No, definitely a relevant thing. Naturalize is not a card that's seen a lot of sideboard play in a long time because we've had a lot of other options, but this being a strictly better version of that card is pretty good. And yeah, the exile mode is super relevant. So I like modal cards that give you a lot of options, and this is the one. So I don't think there's tons to talk about there, but it's a good card.
No, it's just like it's just amazing. It's just great. It's what you want, and I'll take a better Naturalize.
Agreed. So next up we have
Vivian, Champion of the Wilds. She is 2 generic and a green for a legendary Planeswalker. Vivian says you may cast creature spells as though they had flash. Okay, I'm down to clown. And it says +1 until end of turn. Up to 1 target creature gains vigilance and reach. So it turns them into a Sarah Spider.
Yeah, that's it.
And then -2, look at the top 3 cards of your library. Exile 1 face down and put. I gotta zoom in to see this because the background is just terrible to read.
Put the rest of the bottom of your library in any order. For as long as it remains exiled, you may look at that card and you may cast it if it's a creature card.
Gotcha. Okay, fair enough.
It lets you do the little 3-card Monty, and then you might have a creature you can flash in. So,
this card is good. I think this card's good. I think just the static ability alone is worth people putting in their decks.
This feels like a good 3-mana Planeswalker. Like,
yeah,
it's not busted. You have to build around it, but your deck is better when it's in play. So I agree with that.
And I just feel like there are a lot of like things that you can do. This works well with like Growth Chamber Guardian.
Yes, it does.
Which is pretty sweet. So I really like this card. Comparing this to like the Nissa, where it feels like the Nissa is potentially powerful but just doesn't have a home. This will fit somewhere.
Yeah, I think what's crazy
people will figure it out.
The green based aggressive, like the green red aggressive decks, like they really have some options out with the Planeswalker slot and some other things, which I think is cool for how you want to present your build. So. Yeah, it's kind of interesting.
Also, you'll feel like a genius when you downtick this one and you find a Frilled Mystic, and you're just like, yeah. You already have flash, and I don't care. I found you.
You're mine. Next up is Vivian's Arcbow, which is a generic and a green for a legendary artifact. It has an activated ability where you pay X, discard a card, look at the top X cards of your library. You may put a creature card with converted mana cost X or less from among them onto the battlefield. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. I feel like I've seen cards like this a number of times, always worded a little bit differently. But this idea of like, all right, well, I'm going to discard this, this card, which is interesting. This card that has this CMC and do this, and you could potentially try to build a deck around this that is abusing a little bit of that. You have to pay the X mana, so there's that, but. I think it's interesting. I don't quite see it just because you have to pay the X, but it certainly is a way to sort of cycle through dead cards as they come up.
So it is instant speed. There's no like
that is very true.
There's no timing restrictions about this. You don't cast it, right? It just goes.
Also true.
Just goes onto the battlefield, so it's uncounterable. So while you do have to pay the mana, the timing is on your side.
That is true.
Which I think puts it over the edge. And this is how you're going to cast your Fibblefibs, right? You're just going to find them off the Arcbow.
Okay, I like that.
But no, I do like this card. I think that again, this is another way that the creature decks can fight against the control decks. Just giving your creatures flash is a nightmare a lot of times for those for something like Esper. Think about Esper and like all the ways they don't have to deal with like this arc bow. It comes down at 2. Like if you're on the play, like hope you had the duress.
Yeah, I don't disagree there, but at the same time, it doesn't have the planning element that like Vivian itself has. Like, okay, cool, and your turn, I'll pay 4, discard this card for 4, and I missed.
Yeah, there would certainly be those times where you're just kind of sad and your arc bow turned into a augur bolus.
Yeah, an expensive. Yeah, that's true.
And he lost you a card. I don't disagree with that. But I do think that it's still probably powerful
It's
enough.
definitely powerful enough.
And, this is a build around you the same way that augur bolus is a build around.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
So.
One last green card that we skipped over.
Yeah, we did. I just noticed it.
It was Forced Landing, and it's nothing super powerful. It's generic and a green for an instant. Put target creature with flying on the bottom of his owner's library. When I saw this card the first time, the specific note was that certain cards in this set were getting, especially Planeswalkers, were getting heavily punished by Rekindling Phoenix. So they wanted a clean answer in green for it. So this card was literally designed because Rekindling Phoenix exists in the format. So good. But I think there's a lot of cards this deals with that should be, because people are playing Collision Colossus already in the main.
Yeah.
This is a clean answer to Rekindling Phoenix, Niv Mizzet,
Lyra.
Lyra, Doom
Kefnet.
Whisperer when you see those, Kefnet. And for Kefnet, like, because of how it works, like this, the God Clause won't kick in. So.
No, it goes to the bottom of the library, you fool.
Yeah, so I
stay there.
I think like this is a pretty solid sideboard card that you should not forget about.
No.
It's fighting with things like I said, like Collision and Crushing Vines.
Yeah, well, Canopy, right? Crushing
Canopy. Sorry.
Crushing Vines.
They're like, one does enchantments, one does artifacts, whatever.
Yeah.
But I think like you have to remember, like, if you want to cleanly get rid of Rekindling Phoenixes, if you want to protect your Vivians, for example, or even your Nisses, that's that. So
100%. Yeah. So that was green, and I mean, we talked a lot. There were a lot of green cards. I feel like so I feel the trend continues that green gets a lot of powerful stuff, and all the other cards, all the other colors suffer. No, I'm just kidding. I do think that that's where we're gonna cut it off. So this is hopefully I think we can get through everything else. Next episode.
Card number wise, it is comparable and even to a little bit less. So
next episode,
I'm like over here like hand motioning to the Morgan, like I'm tapping out. That's all I can do today.
So we definitely do appreciate you sticking with us through part 1 of our Palooza here. Thank you again for listening. If you are listening to us via any sort of place that lets you rate or review a podcast, please feel free to do so. We really do appreciate it. If you're listening to us via Legit MTG, thank you so much for picking us up, and make sure you check out some of the other articles they have on their website as well as their online store. If you want to reach out to us, we have multiple ways you could do that. You can go through our Twitter. It's YourEndstep. And when you add us, it's @YourEndstep. We also have an email address, @YourEndstep@gmail.com, or facebook.com/@YourEndstep. If you are a member of our Patreon, thank you so much again. You can find out more about our Patreon at patreon.com/@YourEndstep. Again, we are going to have our Mike's Book Corner that's going to be going up there.
Book Nook, it rhymes.
Sorry, Mike's Book Nook. That's going to be going up there. Probably not next week, probably the week after that, if I had to hazard a guess, just so it gives us enough time, and it gives enough people enough time to get through that section of the novel and lets us marinate. And we're going to be doing the rest of the Palooza next week, so it's a long, arduous work. So we'll probably hold off until the week after. But that's going to be everything for us this week. Thank you again to Comic Town as well, our sponsor. Definitely want to give them a shout out. So
they ran a really sweet IQ this last weekend that I managed top 8, and former host David Nolan managed to take down. So he and I are both not qualified. Morgan also tried to qualify, and
Dave beat me round 1 because he's a jerk.
We're like, oh, we'll just get you both qualified here, and they were like, look at these pairings. So, but now we got to get Morgan qualified so we can take the whole team to Roanoke.
Yeah, that'd be a good time. That's maybe. I did end up going far. I lost my first 2 rounds and then rattled off 4 in a row, which felt pretty good.
Finished strong. So
got 16th place. Unfortunately,
I played at the 18 mountain mono red list that Morgan pointed out to me that Wyatt Darby had been running, and I dropped 1 game in the Swiss. So that deck was hot fire.
That deck, it was popularized by Luke, I think he was a qualifier for the Invitational, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, fair enough. I had no intention to slight. My apologies.
So, no, it's fine. But that White Darby played that in one of the fandom.
Yeah, I
leagues.
do think he attributed that to him in the tweet. I retweeted
Yeah.
the list if you want to see it. It's on our.
And that list is like apparently the bee's knees. I got to figure out how to play it.
It's
because
the hottest fire. It's so good.
I just hit Diamond in Arena, and I want to see if I can actually
haven't
make a
really hit
genuine
Mythic
run
yet.
to Mythic.
I've been sitting at like Diamond 1 this whole time, and I need to go finish and try to get the Mythic. So
Yeah, I feel ya. But that's going to be everything for us this week. We will catch you next time, and you folks have a great one. Bye.